Chapter 841, Inside Heavenly Dao Tower. You will now enter the Heavenly Dao Tower. There are no rules inside. You may fight each other or help one another. As long as you reach the 5th floor, you pass the first trial, the white-haired elder at the front shouted. If you climb higher, your score will increase exponentially with each floor. We understand. Over 100 people responded in unison. The next moment, the elder waved his hand, and the 1st floor gate of the Heavenly Dao Tower slowly opened. 100 people marched into the tower. As soon as they stepped in, they were hit with an intense pressure and rebound force. Some people were caught off guard and were immediately thrown out by the rebound force. 1,000 times gravity, Suzimo calmly remarked, feeling the effect on his body. This gravity was calibrated based on each person's cultivation level. No matter how strong you were, you couldn't escape its pull. Everyone felt as if their legs were filled with lead, exceptionally heavy. I suggest no one fight for now, said a man in a green robe who stepped forward. Let's work together to reach the 5th floor first. My name is Zhang Cho, Holy Son of the 7 Emotions Sacred Ground. Ah, the Saint of Emotion, someone murmured in admiration. I've never met him before, but his deeds are well known. It's said his tune Parting Sorrow makes all beings weep. I recommend he lead us. For now, let's just make it to the 5th floor. People began to express agreement. Zhang Cho smiled and said, I've studied the Heavenly Dao Tower a bit. If you're willing, I'll do my part. His suggestion was accepted by part of the group, but some were too proud to follow anyone. This tower's difficulty increases drastically with each floor. It's as hard as reaching the heavens, Zhang Cho explained. The 1st floor is 1,000-fold gravity. You all feel it. The 2nd floor is the true solar fire. The crowd, half skeptical, trudged their way up under the crushing weight. Suzimo didn't find it too difficult. He glanced at the gray-robed youth who had entered with them. The youth also climbed effortlessly, completely unaffected by the gravity. The moment they passed through the spatial gate into the 2nd floor, a wave of searing heat surged toward them. And this was not ordinary heat. It burned directly into the soul. Looking around, the entire 2nd floor was engulfed in blazing solar flames. Just the sight made people's scalps tingle. To pass this floor, they had to walk directly into the true solar fire. If they failed, they would be reduced to ashes in an instant. Legend says the flame ancestor of Heavenly Dao Academy once cultivated the Great Sun Mantra and summoned this true solar fire. It remains here in the tower, unique in the world, Zhang Cho said. Everyone, know your limits. If you're not confident, don't go in, you'll die. As he finished speaking, the gray-robed youth calmly walked straight into the flames. No aura surrounded him. He looked completely ordinary. The flames roared around him, but he ignored them and walked in silently. This guy, Monk Great Wisdom muttered beside Suzimo. What do you think? Suzimo asked. It's hard and not hard. Suzimo smiled and stepped in right after him. Seeing Suzimo come out unharmed, some others cautiously tried to follow. But one of them turned to ash before he could even scream. A living person just vanished, someone said in shock. This fire isn't physical, Suzimo said to Monk Great Wisdom. It burns the soul. If your heart is fearless and filled with heroism, you can charge through it unharmed. But if you feel even a sliver of fear, your soul will burn to nothing. This man speaks truth, Zhang Cho chimed in. If you can't charge forward without hesitation, you'll need other methods. He pulled out a small pill from his storage ring. It was a deep blue, about the size of a dragon's eye, releasing a chill from its surface. This is a soul-clearing pill I bought for a high price. It purifies the soul, shielding it from the solar fire. Zhang Cho smiled. The tower's tests may be harsh, but they follow certain patterns. Be careful. He swallowed the pill, and a blue aura surrounded him, wrapping around his body. He then stepped into the flames under everyone's watch. Brother Zhang, do you have more of those pills? I'll pay a high price, someone asked. I've got 10 more. I'll sell them to the highest bidder. Or we can trade. If you prefer, Zhang Cho grinned. Su Zimo watched from the side with amusement. This guy clearly came prepared and was using the test to make a fortune. Many people immediately rushed to buy the pills, but others remained calm. Some sat cross-legged to steady their minds before advancing. Soon, many began walking into the fire. Some passed. Some vanished without a trace. Out of the 100 who entered the tower, after just 2 floors, nearly half were gone. And these weren't average cultivators, they were the cream of the crop. Even so, many fell. When the remaining group reached the 3rd floor, they found themselves surrounded by chaos. Gray mist filled the air. At the front stood 3 ancient statues. In the middle was a golden statue of a Buddha, holding one hand in a Buddhist gesture. He had a joyful, chubby face, large earlobes, and a big belly, forever smiling. On either side were 2 arhats with gold-red cloaks over their shoulders. "What's the 3rd floor about?" someone asked Zhang Cho quickly. "Ghost and Buddha. 2 faces. See your true self," Zhang Cho said solemnly. "This test is to see if you understand your own heart. Whether you're destined to be a grand emperor or just a cultivator, you must know the path you're walking." "That's it? Sounds easy," someone muttered. "But everyone here wanted to become a grand emperor, otherwise they wouldn't have come." "You'll understand once you try," Zhang Cho smiled mysteriously. If only the tests at Heavenly Dao Academy were really that simple. Before anyone could say more, the gray-robed youth stepped forward again, once more the first to go ahead. Chapter 842. Defeat Your Other Self. The gray-robed youth stepped calmly into the 3rd level. The crowd did not rush in. Instead, they stood aside and observed. Majestic Buddhist chants echoed from the empty void. Then, the 3 Buddha statues radiated golden light. The light combined with the gray mist, enveloping the gray-robed youth. His steps paused slightly, but he quickly moved again, dispersing the layers of mist and easily passing through the level. He got through in just a few seconds? Zhang Cho was stunned. What kind of monster is he? Is it really that easy? Someone asked, puzzled. Another young man stepped into the gray mist and golden light. Within 2 minutes, he suddenly staggered out, hair disheveled, acting like a madman. "I'm a ghost, he screamed. Then, he self-destructed his own meridians and died right there. The contrast between the 2 outcomes shocked everyone. Su Zimo smiled and ignored the others. He walked straight in. The moment he entered, his vision changed. Everything around him was gray and hazy, with only the 3 golden Buddha statues floating in the air. One of the Buddhas spoke. "Do you wish to become an emperor?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. "Very well. We shall help you," the middle Buddha said with a smile as he flicked a golden finger. A beam of golden light flew down and entered Su Zimo's forehead. In that instant, golden Buddhist light radiated from his body. A powerful Buddhist aura surged within him. He had become a true Buddha. "In the name of Buddha, you walk the world." A mighty chant rang from the sky. "You are the living Buddha." Su Zimo looked up. The gray mist vanished. The 3 statues were gone. He turned around to see Monk Great Wisdom and the others looking at him with admiration. As the living Buddha, he was revered and respected by all. Some even fell to their knees upon seeing him. Su Zimo sensed time passing much faster for him, but subtly so. Even a God Meridian cultivator wouldn't notice. He passed the 3rd level effortlessly. As the living Buddha, he felt reborn. He climbed all the way to the 10th floor with ease. This attracted the attention of the entire Heavenly Dao Academy. The dean met with him personally and began training him as the top candidate to become an emperor. His fame quickly spread. He held Buddhist conferences, taught Dharma, and had thousands of disciples. Some even built temples and golden statues in his honor. Soon, heavens will formed, and in the struggle for it, he shone brightly. After many hard battles, he finally seized heaven's will. Just as he stood in the heavens, receiving heaven's will, the 3 Buddhas from the Heavenly Dao Tower reappeared before him. They were laughing wildly. The golden light around him faded, replaced by ghostly energy. The 3 statues turned into skeletons, black flames burning in their eyes. You are no living Buddha. You are a sacrifice of the ghost race. The skulls laughed. Suddenly, all the golden light within him turned into ghostly darkness. His entire face was consumed by it. The temples built for him, the golden statues, they all transformed into ghosts. His disciples were consumed by ghost energy, screaming and wailing. At the moment he was closest to heaven's will, a giant hand knocked him from the heavens. Then, Su Zimo opened his eyes again, still in the 3rd level of the heavenly Tao Tower. So this is Ghost and Buddha in one life. A test to reveal the true heart, he muttered. The illusion had created an entire lifetime, complete with beliefs and identity. He spent a whole life as the living Buddha, only to be told he was a ghost. To be knocked down just before grasping heaven's will, this contrast could break a person. He questioned, do you want to be Buddha, a ghost, or simply yourself, regardless of either? But Su Zimo's heart was strong. He was not shaken. He simply observed the life created by the illusion with calm clarity. He passed the 3rd level slightly slower than the gray-robed youth, who likely broke the illusion instantly. Such willpower and clarity of heart ranked among the top 5 of all young elites Su Zimo had ever known. He turned to Monk Great Wisdom and smiled. Go ahead. Just remember this. Don't try to be a Buddha or a ghost. Just be yourself. Seeing several had already entered, the remaining dozens hesitated, then followed. The gray mist surged violently. Out of the remaining 50, only a dozen made it through the 3rd level. Monk Great Wisdom burst out of the mist, drenched in sweat. Panting heavily, he looked at Su Zimo and laughed. That was intense, way too intense. What did you see? Su Zimo asked. I saw myself bearing heaven's will. Monk Great Wisdom laughed. But that illusion didn't account for one thing. I can see fate. Our fortune-telling path can read a person's aura. I don't have the fate to become an emperor. Even if you place heaven's will in front of me, I won't become one. They bet on the wrong person. Still, it felt great to experience being an emperor once. No regrets. Su Zimo chuckled and shook his head. The group continued to the 4th floor. Once they passed it and reached the 5th floor, the Heavenly Tao Tower's test would be complete. Everyone was nervous. These trials were brutal. When the dozen of them arrived at the 4th level, they were each separated into their own space. Su Zimo appeared alone in a room. Inside, he found a second Su Zimo, an exact duplicate. For most people, the hardest enemy is not someone else. It's themselves, said an ancient voice echoing in the void. To pass the 4th level, you must defeat yourself. Su Zimo laughed softly and looked at his mirror image. Identical in every way, no flaw to spot. He drew his blade, Shadow Tyrant. The other Su Zimo did the same. They moved in sync, using the same techniques. Interesting, Su Zimo smiled. But I'm not going to play this game with you anymore. Chapter 843 Meditating for 1,000 Years. Su Zimo clenched his right hand. An endless demonic energy gathered in his palm. The other version of himself did the same. But in the next moment, Su Zimo's figure vanished from where he stood. A loud boom echoed, and the phantom opposite him was pierced straight through the chest. The duplicate looked surprised at Su Zimo. Then, it slowly faded and disappeared into the air. Su Zimo clapped his hands. The duplicate was well crafted. But any replication has its limits. If one's strength is too far beyond, it becomes impossible to replicate. Just like if an emperor were placed here, let alone copying their techniques, even a phantom couldn't be created. Once the phantom vanished, the space around Su Zimo dissolved, revealing a bright path of clouds. Su Zimo walked directly down the path. At the portal leading to the 5th level, he saw that someone had already arrived ahead of him. It was the gray-robed youth from before. Both were slightly surprised to see each other. How should I address you, brother? The gray-robed youth asked. After Su Zimo introduced himself, he smiled and asked, And you? I'm Mo Tianming, the gray-robed youth replied. Among the 100 who entered the Heavenly Tao Tower, you're the only one I find worthy, brother Su. Su Zimo chuckled but didn't respond. By now, only 2 others had made it through the 4th level, aside from Su Zimo and Mo Tianming. One of them was Monk Great Wisdom. When he exited, he coughed blood, barely hanging on to life, with his soul heavily damaged. But he had passed. The other was the young man named Zhang Chou. The 4 stood before the portal of the 4th level. Su Zimo looked at Monk Great Wisdom and asked, "What happened to you?" "I had a fortune-telling duel with my other self," Monk Great Wisdom said with blood at his lips, smiling. "In the end, I used a forbidden technique and saw his true nature. That's how I won." "You suffered backlash from the forbidden technique," Su Zimo said. "It doesn't matter." Monk Great Wisdom shook his head. "I passed the test, that's all that counts." When the group passed through the portal to the 5th level, they found total darkness. In front of them were 4 meditation cushions. A hunched elder in green robes, leaning on a cane, slowly emerged from the darkness. He looked at the 4 of them and said, "This 5th test is different from the others. You only need to sit on the cushions and stay there for 1,000 years. If you don't leave, you pass." Monk Great Wisdom frowned slightly. "This is a test? The peak of the martial path is loneliness." Zhang Chou smiled. "It's solitude and endless pursuit. It's cold at the top. This test examines whether you can endure solitude. 1,000 years on that cushion. How many could truly last?" "Of course," the green-robed elder added. "You can choose to give up now. You'll still pass the Heavenly Dao Tower test. But the higher you go, the more points you earn." "I give up," Zhang Chou said without hesitation. He knew his limits and didn't plan to waste time. "I'll give it a shot," Monk Great Wisdom said, a bit reluctantly. "Don't worry," the elder said. "Time flows differently here. Time is frozen. No matter how long you stay, the outside world won't be affected." The 3 nodded and sat down on the cushions. Loneliness is one of the most terrifying things in this world. Place someone in a small, closed space for a while, and most will go insane. Time passed slowly. Su Zimo was unaffected. Not only could his soul enter the God world at any time, but his mental state was exceptionally stable. Even tens of thousands of years wouldn't shake him. He took the opportunity to refine himself. Previously, his body's power vortexes had reached their limit. But now that the God world had entered the grand cultivation era, his body transformed again, allowing for more power vortexes to form. His strange Meridian Sutra had also reached 10 meridians, almost complete. He cultivated while tempering his heart. The darkness surrounding them was like a giant beast, roaring silently around them. 1 year, 2 years. As time dragged on, Monk Great Wisdom was the first to give in. He stood up from the darkness, breathing heavily, unable to bear it anymore. He exited the 1,000-year meditation. Only those who've truly experienced it can understand the horror. 100 years, 200 years. Eventually, time no longer mattered. The only way to survive loneliness was to embrace it. Su Zimo could feel his strength had leveled up significantly through the long tempering. This was accumulation leading to explosive growth. All this effort would pay off when he sought to become an emperor. Eventually, everything came together. Suddenly, a series of bell tolls echoed from the darkness. It shattered the 1,000-year silence. 1,000 years have passed. The green-robed elder's voice rang out. Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes. A flash of black mist crossed his pupils. He stood up. Alongside him, Mo Tianming also stood. The 2 glanced at each other. "Shall we go to the 6th level?" Mo Tianming asked with a smile. "Yes." Su Zimo nodded calmly. The green-robed elder smiled and said, "Let me warn you both. From the 6th level onward, these are no longer just tests. The first 5 were about your mental strength, soul, and will. Starting from the 6th, you'll need raw power. There are no shortcuts." Outside the Heavenly Dao Tower, among the examiners, a white-robed elder smiled. "Looks like we've got some real talent this year." "We're not just looking for talent," another elder said. "We're looking for those who can truly carry heaven's will." I wonder if anyone will make it to the 10th level. It's nearly impossible. The white-robed elder shook his head. Since the Heavenly Tao Tower was built in the Desolate Era until now, the number of people who've passed the 10th floor can be counted on 2 hands. Did you hear the Holy Son of Immortal Extinction is coming to our academy? The white-robed elder asked again. Old Qingwei told me himself. Another elder nodded. They've got both a Holy Son and Saintess in this generation. They plan to train the son at the Heavenly Tao Academy and the daughter themselves. Their goal is to have them both carry heaven's will together. Chapter 844 Stellar Emperor. As the two stepped into the 6th level, thunderous drums roared in their ears. Their figures appeared on a vast and desolate battlefield. Across this land, countless enemies charged toward them. Humans, beasts, titans, ghosts, stone giants, races of every kind. Each one radiated overwhelming strength, seemingly unstoppable. Su Zimo wielded his Shadow Tyrant saber, while Mo Tianming's hands burst with brilliant green light as he dove into the enemy ranks. In an instant, the tide of enemies was split apart like a flood being torn open. From the 6th to the 9th level, the trials were similar. Each stage took place on this vast battlefield, but the enemies grew increasingly powerful and numerous. Even the gravity in the space increased by several magnitudes. Thunder would occasionally fall from the skies, and blazing firestorms would sweep across the land. A single mistake could lead to complete annihilation. Su Zimo and Mo Tianming fought a bloody path to the 9th level. At that point, they were like war gods, surrounded by an ocean of slaughter. Covered head to toe in blood, they looked like living demons. Breathing heavily, Mo Tianming glanced at Su Zimo. The two then stepped together into the 10th level. Outside the tower, the city of Heavenly Tao was in a complete uproar. Everyone stood beneath the Heavenly Tao Tower, watching in awe. In past generations, just one person reaching the 10th level was enough to cause a sensation. This time, 2 people had entered together, meaning there was a chance 2 might pass at once. How likely is it they'll make it through? Someone asked excitedly. Just reaching the 10th floor means they're freakishly gifted. The real question is, what is the trial on the 10th floor? Someone nearby said with a shake of the head. Among the examiners from the academy, an elderly man let out a long breath and smiled. This era, it looks like it's going to be spectacular. Inside the 10th floor of the Heavenly Tao Tower, a world wrapped in starlight. As the two arrived, the sight before them left them momentarily stunned. The night sky was blanketed in stars, so close they felt tangible. A great river of stars flowed from east to west like a galactic waterfall. Glittering light, a falling galaxy. In the distance, beneath the stars, stood a single figure. That figure felt like it had merged with the world itself. He was the sky. He was the stars. He wore a blue robe and stood out like a beacon among the constellations. As Su Zimo and Mo Tianming approached, the figure slowly turned around. Stellar Emperor! Mo Tianming exclaimed in shock as the man faced them. Su Zimo looked up and saw the long-haired man, his hair casually flowing behind him. He had a high nose, sharp brows, star-like eyes. Especially those starry eyes, they seemed to truly contain galaxies. Starlight surged around him in waves. Seems someone still remembers me. The man smiled when Mo Tianming called out his imperial title. As you can see, I am the examiner of the 10th trial. Stellar Emperor, an ancient and legendary figure. He was entirely a product of Heavenly Tao Academy. It was said he had once been a beggar, who accidentally passed an academy trial and thus began a heaven-defying journey. He crushed not only the younger generation of the academy, but even ancestors of previous eras. Eventually, he bore the mantle of heaven's will. But he remained one of the most low-key emperors ever. He never created a lineage or faction. After bearing heaven's will, he stayed at the academy as a teacher. He left all his knowledge behind and eventually ascended to the outer heavens. How does the Grand Emperor plan to test us? Mo Tianming asked curiously. Very simple. Defeat me, Stellar Emperor said with a smile.
Montag Tianming Froze.
To face an emperor head-on, they were still a step short of that. After all, they were only at the God Meridian realm. No need to panic, Stellar Emperor said, still smiling. The version of me standing here is just a shadow I left behind before I bore heaven's will. So in some ways, we're on the same level. Which one of you wants to go first? He asked. I will, Mo Tianming said, glancing at Su Zimo. He stepped forward, green spirit force swirling around him. The aura formed raging winds that howled through the space. With a spin, Mo Tianming vanished from view. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Stellar Emperor. The wind howled, slashing toward the Emperor. Stellar Emperor's expression turned serious. He clearly didn't dare to underestimate this attack. He raised his right hand, and endless starlight gathered in his palm. Boom! Their collision exploded in midair. Both retreated 3 steps, an even match. Not bad. Again. Stellar Emperor laughed loudly. The starlight around him intensified. The Milky Way fell around him, and his power surged even higher. With a punch, the stars burst forth in a dazzling light. Kuenping's 9 steps.
Montag Tianming shouted coldly.
Tornadoes whipped up around him, stirring dust into the sky. Piercing bird cry echoed faintly. Countless afterimages of Mo Tianming swirled around Stellar Emperor, launching attacks from all sides. Starlight and gale force winds exploded. The 2 figures separated once again. One final move to decide the winner, Stellar Emperor said with a grin. If we keep trading small blows, we'll be here all day. Agreed. Mo Tianming nodded. He raised his right hand, and a green orb formed in his palm. This orb radiated primal, wild power. It locked into his palm and surged forward with unstoppable force. Stellar Emperor smiled and raised his own right fist. He reached toward the sky, drawing the entire starry sky's energy into himself. Battle!
Montag Tianming shouted.
Their fists collided. At that moment, a shockwave erupted, and space itself was torn apart like fragile paper. Unimaginable power surged between them. Behind both fighters, massive true heavens will phantoms appeared. Behind Stellar Emperor was a sea of stars. Behind Mo Tianming was a massive creature's shadow. It was green, its form vague and indistinct, hiding its true nature. As the 2 remained locked in a deadlock, a strange, mysterious energy suddenly burst from within Mo Tianming. Stellar Emperor was blown backward. Chapter 845. Entering Heavenly Tao Academy. That mysterious power inside Mo Tianming burst out in just an instant. And just as quickly, in the next moment, it vanished completely. It left behind an almost unreal illusion. But Stellar Emperor's figure had indeed been blasted backward. One had to understand, even though this image of Stellar Emperor was from before he bore heaven's will, back then he had already been invincible within the Heavenly Tao Academy. How could he be defeated so easily? You? Stellar Emperor gave Mo Tianming a slightly surprised glance, then fell into brief thought. I guess I won, right? Mo Tianming asked. Not bad, not bad, Stellar Emperor said with a light smile. I'll be waiting for you in the outer heavens. For him to say that was enough to show just how highly he valued Mo Tianming. Do you want to take a rest before fighting me? Su Zimo stepped forward and asked calmly. No need, I haven't used up much. Stellar Emperor waved his hand. Starlight flared violently in his right hand as he looked at Su Zimo, showing no trace of underestimation. Reaching this 10th floor was proof enough of his strength. Starlight surged around his fist. As he threw a punch, the heavens and earth changed color, stars swirled, and the void collapsed. Su Zimo grinned slightly. If this had been the image of Stellar Emperor after becoming an emperor, he might have had some fun fighting. But as a God Meridian, he was confident he was unmatched. With a snap, the incoming star-filled punch was caught directly in his hand. Su Zimo yanked his right arm backward, pulling Stellar Emperor's figure forward. Then, with a loud bang, Su Zimo swung his leg down and kicked the other man flying. Even though Stellar Emperor crossed his arms to block, the sheer force still sent him flying. How is it? Do you still want to fight?
Su yi mo yukke.
Boundless spirit force surged from his body like a mighty river, suppressing the entire starry sky. With just one move, the two had already measured each other's strength. One more move. If you win, I'll count it as you passing, Stellar Emperor said gravely. Mo Tianming stood nearby, watching carefully. Behind Stellar Emperor, his true heavens will appeared, countless stars dazzling brightly, condensing into human-shaped silhouettes. Those are constellations? Mo Tianming said in surprise. There were 28 in total, each with a strange form, each gathering a different kind of stellar power. Blade of constellations, Stellar Emperor called out lightly. The power of the constellations gathered into a curved blade that tore through layers of void, slashing directly toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo raised his head as dense infernal energy gathered in his palm. He reached out and grabbed at the blade. With a loud boom, the surrounding void exploded in layers. Under Stellar Emperor's stunned gaze, a pair of giant hands tore through the void, seizing the blade of constellations. He split it in two, crushing the stars in his palm. Stellar Emperor's figure staggered backward, retreating several steps before stopping. Mo Tianming, watching from the side, was wide-eyed and drew in a deep breath. Does that count as passing? Su Zimo asked. Indeed, the past is gone. Of all the heroes, we look to the present. Stellar Emperor laughed loudly. If we had been in the same era, it would have been truly spectacular. Outside the Heavenly Dao Tower, as a flash of purple light flickered from the 10th floor, two chimes rang from the tower's top. In an instant, the crowd erupted. Everyone in Heavenly Dao City knew exactly what those two chimes meant. Two people had passed the 10th floor of the Heavenly Dao Tower. When Su Zimo and Mo Tianming emerged, all eyes turned toward them. Three people stepped forward to greet them. In the middle was an elderly man with snow-white hair, wearing a white robe. On his left was a slightly burly man. On his right was a woman with long hair flowing behind her, a sword at her waist. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Li Changhe, Vice Dean of the Heavenly Dao Academy, the old man said with a smile. Greetings, Vice Dean. Su Zimo and Mo Tianming both nodded politely. You two have passed the 10th floor of the Heavenly Dao Tower. According to the rules, you may skip the second round of the examination and directly enter the Heavenly Dao Academy, Li Changhe said with a smile. Su Zimo and Mo Tianming exchanged glances, then nodded slightly. Vice Dean, are you saying our assessment is over? Mo Tianming asked. Yes. Here's what we'll do, stay with me. Once everyone's examinations are done today, I'll make special arrangements for the two of you, Li Changhe said with a nod. Su Zimo looked up at the sky. The evening glow had already dyed half the skies, and the sun was nearly set. It seemed the day's testing at the Heavenly Dao Academy was almost finished. Following behind Li Changhe, the two ignored the whispers and stares from the crowd. The academy staff brought chairs for them to sit beside Li Changhe. The testing in the Heavenly Dao Tower continued. Li Changhe looked at them with a smile. Where are you two from? Just a nameless wandering cultivator, Mo Tianming replied with a grin. I'm from the true martial sacred ground, Su Zimo said. He didn't bother to hide it. Given the Heavenly Dao Academy's influence, they could easily find out his identity anyway. True martial sacred ground. Li Changhe's brows furrowed slightly, but he still nodded. By dusk, the academy's recruitment had finally ended. As the crowd slowly dispersed, it turned out that only Su Zimo and Mo Tianming had truly passed the 10th floor that day. Meng He, Li Changhe called out. A young woman in a green lotus dress swayed gracefully as she approached. She had a pure, delicate face, long shiny black hair, bright eyes, and fair skin. Teacher, the green-dressed Li Menghe greeted softly. Take these two to the oasis courtyard, Li Changhe instructed, pointing to Su Zimo and Mo Tianming. Yes, Li Menghe nodded. The white-haired Li Changhe turned back to Su Zimo and Mo Tianming with a smile. Rest in the Oasis courtyard tonight. Tomorrow, after I speak with the other teachers, we'll assign you to the right instructors. Su Zimo nodded without objection. He was here for the nine-curve God Flame. Other matters didn't concern him much. The Heavenly Tao Academy, which so many people fought to enter, didn't hold great weight in his eyes. Come with me, Li Menghe said, looking at them. Then she turned and led the way into the Heavenly Tao Academy. Chapter 846, Academy Conspiracy. The main gate of the Heavenly Tao Academy was 100 meters wide, towering into the clouds. A magnificent and imposing aura radiated from the gate. On each side of the gate stood two statues of men. One man held a horsetail whisk, wearing a Taoist robe, exuding a majestic presence. The other man stood on a blue tiger, his right hand raised above his head, with a blade intent condensed in his palm. These two are the founding ancestors of our Heavenly Tao Academy, Li Menghe explained at the side. The one on the left is Ancestor Blue Tiger, and the one on the right is the One Force Sage. It's said that, in the Desolate Era, they were the pioneers of the Heavenly Tao Academy. Together with others, they founded this academy in an age when beasts ruled and drank blood, with the intent to train more talents for our human race.
Admirable, Montag Tianming nodded.
But later, after Grand Emperor Zhenwu brought prosperity to the human race, our Heavenly Tao Academy also began to accept students without discrimination. People of other races could also join, Li Menghe continued. Vice Dean Li thinks highly of you both, so you should work hard. Sister Li, if you have time tomorrow, could you show us around the academy? Su Zimo asked. He mainly wanted to look for the location of the nine-curve God Flame, but it wasn't convenient to ask directly, lest others think he had ulterior motives. That? Li Menghe hesitated for a moment, then said, Let's see how the academy arranges things for you. If there's nothing important, taking you around shouldn't be a problem. Entering the Heavenly Tao Academy, even though night had fallen, the academy was still bustling. Above their heads, countless islands and pavilions floated in the air. Some people sat under the sky absorbing the essence of stars and moon. Some flew on swords, and others rode ancient beasts whose overwhelming aura filled the heavens. The Heavenly Tao Academy was vast beyond sight, with around 100,000 students. Its prosperity, liveliness, and resources were unmatched by any other academy on the primordial heartlands. When the group arrived at the Oasis courtyard, they saw it was a quiet residence. All around were spirit-gathering formations, and the spirit force was abundant. Various flowers, plants, and trees were planted in the surroundings. In the center of the courtyard stood several large ginkgo trees. The courtyard walls were built from silver moonstone, and inside there were 3 rooms. Whether in environment or in construction materials, everything was top class. All right, rest here for the night, Li Menghe said. Thank you, Sister Li, Mo Tianming said gratefully. Watching Li Menghe's departing figure, Mo Tianming turned to Su Zimo with a smile. So Brother Su is actually a prodigy of the true martial sacred ground. I've been disrespectful. Brother Mo is not simple either, Su Zimo smiled. Back in the Heavenly Tao Tower, Su Zimo had clearly sensed that mysterious power within Mo Tianming. It was definitely imperial might. After all, he had met Grand Emperors before, and this feeling could not be mistaken. Everyone has secrets. I look forward to getting along with you in the future. As fellow students of the academy, we should look after each other, Mo Tianming said with a smile. The two chatted briefly before each returned to their rooms. At that moment, within the Heavenly Tao Academy, in a brightly lit great hall, more than a dozen figures with overwhelming presence sat together. Vice Dean Li Changhe sat to one side. At the head seat sat a woman. She wore a blue and white long robe and a thin veil that half covered her face. Because the robe was loose, her figure could not be clearly seen. From the head seat downward, powerful teachers lined up on both sides. I heard the Heavenly Tao Tower caused quite a stir today. The woman's voice was pleasant and she chuckled. Dean, Li Changhe nodded. Two people passed the 10th floor of the Heavenly Tao Tower today, so I came to ask for your opinion. What did Stellar Ancestor say? The woman asked. The ancestor gave two opinions, Li Changhe said. That young man named Mo Tianming carries imperial might and is surely extraordinary. His future is limitless. As for the other, Su Zimo, he couldn't see through him. Couldn't see through? The woman at the head slightly frowned. Her skin was fair, and the slight furrow of her willow brows gave her a different kind of charm. In this world, there are few people even the ancestor cannot see through. I'm curious as well, but those were exactly the ancestor's words. Li Changhe nodded. What do you all think? The woman asked, looking at the others on both sides. Since the ancestor spoke so highly of them, I think we should train them both well. Yes, perhaps this era's Grand Emperor will come from our Heavenly Tao Academy. I agree. If we have a Grand Emperor in this era, some people won't dare go too far. Vice Dean, what do you think? The woman asked Li Changhe. My suggestion is to focus on cultivating Mo Tianming. As for Su Zimo, we should give him consideration, Li Changhe said. Mo Tianming is a rogue cultivator. If we train him, he'll be ours. Su Zimo, however, is likely the holy son of the true martial sacred ground, as you all know. No matter what, he won't stay in the academy. True enough. A teacher below nodded. We can train both, but Mo Tianming is more worth the effort. In that case, the woman at the head waved her hand slightly and said, Venerable Min, Mo Tianming will be under your guidance. Before heavens will forms, I want you to do everything possible to help him. I understand. A refined-looking man stepped forward and agreed. And Venerable Nu? The woman looked around the hall, frowning slightly. He's probably not here, someone replied. I'll go call him. No need. Just pass the word along. Have Su Zimo report to him tomorrow, the woman said. That's settled. The others had no objections, though they were inwardly curious why Su Zimo was being sent to Venerable Nu. After all, people in the academy had complicated feelings about that man. Venerable Jean, how is your matter going? After finishing the discussion, the woman turned her gaze to a man in golden robes in the hall. It's troublesome. I'm afraid it won't last much longer, Venerable Jean sighed. How much longer is not much longer? The woman asked. 7 days, at most 7 days. Venerable Jean thought for a moment and replied firmly. I understand. You may all go, the woman said after a moment of silence, waving her hand. Dean, several forces in the north are already restless, Venerable Jean added. They all want to take a bite of this meat, but are they not afraid of breaking their teeth? The woman snorted coldly. Chapter 847 Vermilion Bird Island. Hearing the woman's words, Li Changhe let out a long sigh. When did our Heavenly Tao Academy fall to this point? A tiger in the flatlands is still a tiger, and a dragon in shallow waters is still a dragon, someone beside him said lightly. No matter what, we are not to be bullied at will. All right. The woman at the head seemed a bit tired. She leaned back in her seat, waved her hand and said, Just do as I instructed for now. Watching the figures gradually leave, the woman's gaze grew deep, and no one knew what she was thinking. The morning light spread in all directions, with purple energy flowing eastward for 3,000 li. Su Zimo stretched lazily and walked out of his room. In the oasis courtyard, Mo Tianming had risen early and was sitting cross-legged atop the old ginkgo tree in the yard. At this moment, he was inhaling and exhaling purple energy, with a dense stream drifting from the horizon toward him. With each breath in and out, there seemed to be profound mysteries, capable of stirring the changes of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Brother Su, you're awake, Mo Tianming said with a smile when he saw Su Zimo come out. Su Zimo nodded. As the two chatted, Li Changhe walked in from outside with 2 students of the Heavenly Tao Academy. One of them was Li Menghe. The other introduced himself as Luo Tian. Vice Dean Li, Mo Tianming greeted. The Academy has already arranged your assignments, Li Changhe said with a nod and smile. Tianming, from now on you will follow Venerable Min, and Su Zimo will follow Venerable Nu. After speaking, Li Changhe seemed worried they might be uneasy. He explained, both Venerable Min and Venerable Nu are highly renowned teachers in the academy. Following them will be best for your improvement. Thank you, Vice Dean Li. Mo Tianming nodded. Luo Tian, take Tianming to Venerable Min. Li Changhe instructed. Menghe, take Su Zimo to Venerable Nu. Before parting, Mo Tianming smiled and waved to Su Zimo. Brother Su, let's spar when we get the chance. Walking alongside Li Menghe, they headed toward the eastern part of the Heavenly Tao Academy. Because the academy was vast, it allowed aerial travel, whether flying through the air or riding various mounts. While they were flying, Li Menghe looked at Su Zimo and said, a word of warning. Venerable Nu has a bit of a strange personality. Best not to provoke him too much. Strange? Su Zimo asked curiously. I don't know what the academy was thinking, Li Menghe said. Venerable Nu has stated more than once that he would never take students again. I don't understand why they assigned you to him. Is that so?
Su Yimo Yukke.
All the veteran students know. Li Menghe nodded. Venerable Nu is the most irresponsible teacher in the entire academy, even a bit decadent in personality. But I've heard that long ago Venerable Nu was the most respected, and even the one most likely to become the next dean. No one knows why he ended up like this. Su Zimo smiled and asked, do you know if our Heavenly Tao Academy has any fun places? Fun. Li Menghe didn't seem to understand the word very well. Places with fire attributes suitable for cultivation, Su Zimo said. He couldn't openly mention the nine-curve god flame. There are plenty, Li Menghe replied. There's Blaze Mountain in the north, the Southern Fire Basin in the south, and the place we're going now. Venerable Nu's residence is called Vermilion Bird Island. Vermilion Bird Island, Su Zimo said. It's related to the four god beasts, right? Yes. Long ago, a vermilion bird fell here, which caused the entire island to burn with the southern luminous fire, Li Menghe explained. It's eternal and unextinguished, still burning to this day. Does our academy have any particularly powerful flames? Su Zimo asked again. Powerful flames? Plenty, Li Menghe replied, not quite understanding his intent. There's Southern Luminous Fire, Nirvana Flame, Netherworld Purple Blaze. Overall, our Heavenly Tao Academy is far stronger than you think. Hearing her words, Su Zimo sighed inwardly. It seemed he couldn't learn anything useful from her. She was just too simple-minded. Nothing she said was of interest to him. After about 10 minutes, they arrived at Vermilion Bird Island. From afar, the whole island floated in midair, surrounded by dreamy blue flames. The entire sky was lit crimson by the fire. Blazing flames encircled the island, but the plants and trees there seemed to enjoy them. When Su Zimo and Li Menghe approached, they felt no heat. It was as if the flames were cool to the touch. We're here, Li Menghe said. When you meet him, just follow the cues. Venerable Nu isn't easy to deal with, but you'll get used to it. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. He reached out and put his hand into the southern luminous fire, feeling no heat at all. Walking onto the island, they saw lush flowers, plants, and trees everywhere. Wisteria crept along the cobblestone path ahead. Greenwood trees and soaring eagle trees grew thickly on either side. Oddly, aside from the plants, there was no other life here. It was as if vitality here carried a hint of decline. As they walked along the cobblestone path, the southern luminous fire surged like waves on either side, raising tides of flame around them. The sound of clang, clang, clang reached their ears. It was like someone hammering metal. Su Zimo looked up curiously and saw a shop ahead along the path. It seemed to be a blacksmith shop. A tattered flag was stuck into a crack in the doorframe, swaying in the breeze. At the shop's entrance, a burly young man was holding a hammer, striking iron with rhythmic clangs. His expression was focused, so much so that he didn't even notice Su Zimo and Li Menghe approaching. He held the hammer in one hand and pressed down a half-finished sword blank with the other, striking it forcefully. Don't disturb him yet. We'll wait, Li Menghe said to Su Zimo, clearly familiar with this place. They waited for over 10 minutes. The young man's brows furrowed at times. Then he would grin slightly. Finally, after finishing the sword blank to his satisfaction, he placed it into the nearby forge. Just as he wiped the sweat from his forehead with a towel, he finally noticed the two visitors. "Oh, you too," the burly young man said in surprise. "Sister Menghe, when did you get here?" "I've been here a few minutes," Li Menghe said with a smile. "I know your habits, so I didn't disturb you." "Sorry to keep you waiting," the young man said apologetically. "So, Sister Menghe, what brings you here?" "We're looking for Venerable Nu," Li Menghe replied. Chapter 848. The Enemy in 7 Days. "The Academy assigned a student over here and told me to bring him," Li Menghe said, pushing Su Zimo forward with a smile. "Meet your new junior disciple, Su Zimo. This is Rock Solid, Venerable Nu's personal disciple." "Greetings, senior brother," Su Zimo said, following local custom. "Junior brother Su." The burly young man Rock Solid was slightly taken aback. He then asked, "Was he recommended by the Academy? Does Master know?" "He should know," Li Menghe nodded. "Otherwise, they wouldn't have told me to bring him." "Then wait here a moment, I'll go report to Master," Rock Solid replied quickly. As she watched Rock Solid head deeper inside, Li Menghe explained, "Rock Solid is the last closed-door disciple Venerable Nu accepted 100 years ago. He personally enjoys forging weapons and normally has a gentle temperament. But if he's disturbed while forging, he becomes especially irritable. So that's why you waited over 10 minutes without interrupting him," Su Zimo said with a nod. "Yes, if you run into any problems while you're here, you can always come to me," Li Menghe said. "Thank you, senior sister," Su Zimo said with a smile. "We're all from the same academy. No need for thanks." Li Menghe waved it off. "Just remember the Academy's kindness in the future, and don't become an ingrate." Su Zimo felt her words carried some deeper meaning, but didn't ask further. Not long after, Rock Solid came running back quickly, looking a little troubled. "What's wrong?" Li Menghe asked. "Master says he doesn't want to see you," Rock Solid replied hesitantly. "But he didn't directly tell you to leave either." "Then what should we do? Should I go speak to the Academy?"
Li Menghe frowned.
"Don't misunderstand. Master is just like this," Rock Solid explained quickly. "I think it's better for junior brother Su to stay on Vermilion Bird Island for now, and I'll slowly find an opportunity to introduce him to Master." "I suppose that's all we can do," Li Menghe said, turning to Su Zimo. "Is that okay?" "I don't mind. I wasn't expecting anyone to teach me anything anyway," Su Zimo shrugged. "All right, if you need anything, come find me at Bamboo Cloud Forest," Li Menghe said. "I'll head back to report." After bidding Li Menghe farewell, Rock Solid looked at Su Zimo and said, "Junior brother, I'll take you to your quarters." Su Zimo nodded. Within Vermilion Bird Island there was a valley. Flowers bloomed in full, all a vibrant red. Inside were many cave dwellings. "Junior brother, choose any vacant cave dwelling you like," Rock Solid said. "You can take whichever is free." "Senior brother, along the way here I didn't see a single living creature on Vermilion Bird Island. Why is that?" Su Zimo voiced his curiosity. "This is the place where the Vermilion Bird fell. First, its beastly aura is too strong, so no creatures dare approach. Second, Master likes peace and quiet, and doesn't want to be disturbed," Rock Solid explained. "I see," Su Zimo nodded. He casually chose a cave dwelling in the valley. The environment was quite nice, with abundant spirit force and good scenery. But Su Zimo's real goal was the 9-curve god flame. He looked at Rock Solid and asked, "I heard from senior sister Li Mengru that your favorite thing is forging weapons." "Yes." Rock Solid's expression brightened and he nodded quickly. "Seeing weapons and armor completed in my own hands gives a real sense of accomplishment. I also hope that one day, others will proudly wield weapons I've crafted. Does senior brother use southern luminous fire for forging? Su Zimo asked. Yes. Thanks to Master, the southern luminous fire on Vermilion Bird Island is very close to us, so I find it easy to use. Rock Solid nodded. But as far as I know, the best flame for forging weapons is the 9-curve God Flame, right? Su Zimo probed. Why not go and obtain it? Junior brother, you've only just arrived at the academy, so there are some things you may not know, Rock Solid said with a smile. Of course I dream of having the 9-curve God Flame, but it's not something anyone can just take. What do you mean? Su Zimo asked curiously. The 9-curve God Flame once belonged to one of the academy's ancestors, Patriarch Kudin. After he fell, he left the divine flame in the academy, Rock Solid explained. Only those who have made outstanding contributions to the academy can possess the divine flame. So there's such a rule. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Our Heavenly Tao Academy has a treasure tower that stores countless treasures. From the desolate era until now, it's an unimaginable wealth. Rock Solid nodded. Those who contribute to the academy can enter the treasure tower once and take one item. The 9-curve God Flame is kept in the treasure tower. I see. Su Zimo nodded. He was just about to ask more about the treasure tower when a loud rumbling came from the sky. Looking up, he saw the weather over the Heavenly Tao Academy suddenly change. Spirit force was gathering and surging violently. A giant hand tore through the thick clouds, ripping open the sky. What's going on? Su Zimo asked in confusion. I don't know. Rock Solid's face changed slightly and he shook his head. With the appearance of the giant hand in the void, the entire Heavenly Tao Academy erupted into commotion. Students and teachers alike looked up. A calm yet forceful voice rang out from deep within the academy. Who dares trespass in my Heavenly Tao Academy? Li Changhe appeared, dressed in a white robe, his white hair flowing, exuding the aura of an immortal, stepping through the air toward the disturbance. Brother Changhe, we meet again. A light laugh came from the void. From the crack torn open by the giant hand, a translucent figure emerged. His appearance couldn't be seen clearly, but an overwhelming pressure radiated from him, enveloping the entire Heavenly Tao Academy. Everyone could feel the oppressive weight. To come to our Heavenly Tao Academy only to hide like a turtle, how pathetic, Li Changhe mocked. Brother Changhe, don't be angry, the voice replied. 7 days from now you will see us again. Then we'll speak in 7 days. What are you trying to do now? Show off. Li Changhe said coldly. I'm only thinking of old ties and want to give you and these children some advice, the figure said calmly. Leave the Heavenly Tao Academy and Heavenly Tao City as soon as possible. Otherwise, in 7 days when we arrive, rivers of blood will flow. Courting death, Li Changhe roared. The whisk in his hand turned into a streak of white light, carrying immense power toward the figure. No need to be so worked up, brother. We will meet again. With a burst of laughter, the white light engulfed everything. The sky returned once again to tranquility. Chapter 849 Vermilion Bird Life Leaf. Li Changhe looked at the disappearing figure in the sky and remained silent. He stood in deep thought for a long time before finally turning to leave. After this small episode, the entire Heavenly Tao Academy fell into chaos. The students were all whispering among themselves. What exactly did that sudden phantom and his words mean? There were actually people in the Overlord region who dared to provoke Heavenly Tao Academy, and more importantly, Vice Dean Li seemed to have known about this matter long ago. For the moment, the Academy gave no response at all. If it hadn't been for this sudden appearance, most people would likely still be completely in the dark. You really don't know? Su Zimo looked at Rock Solid and asked. I don't know. Rock Solid shook his head. I've always stayed here on Vermilion Bird Island and have no interest in other matters. Does our Heavenly Tao Academy have any enemies? Su Zimo asked. What enemies could we have? Rock Solid shook his head with a smile. The Academy teaches and educates people. We don't block anyone's path. So where would enemies come from? Well, that makes it interesting, Suzimo said with a faint smile. The two chatted briefly before Rock Solid returned to the smithy to continue forging his weapons. With nothing else to do, Suzimo wandered around Vermilion Bird Island. On the island, the southern luminous fire illuminated half the sky. Countless flowers, plants, and trees thrived and grew vigorously amidst the blazing flames. In fact, from the moment he had set foot on the island, he had sensed its extraordinariness. Strictly speaking, the ground beneath his feet was not truly an island, but the back of the Vermilion Bird itself. He could feel the faint sound of a heartbeat, the flow of blood, and the almost imperceptible oppressive power coursing through its meridians. All of these signs allowed Suzimo to judge that Vermilion Bird Island was actually the Vermilion Bird's body. Suzimo wanted to go see the location of the Vermilion Bird's heart. Following his senses, he passed through thick bushes, and the further he walked in that direction, the hotter the southern luminous fire around him became. The temperature continued to rise. Pushing aside the dense branches in front of him, Suzimo finally saw the scene ahead. It was a sea of fire. A true sea of flames formed by southern luminous fire. The bluish flames carried a tinge of red. It seemed as though the sharp cry of the Vermilion Bird echoed from within. And beside the flames, a man was sitting at that moment. The man held a wine flask in one hand and leaned against a gravestone in the midst of the fire. When Suzimo arrived, the man's previously dull, lifeless eyes suddenly snapped open. With overwhelming pressure, he looked directly at Suzimo. The surrounding southern luminous fire burned fiercely, crackling loudly. "Who are you?" the man asked as he slowly stood up, his gaze fixed on Suzimo. "A newcomer. The Academy told me to follow Venerable Nu," Suzimo said with a smile. In truth, he had already guessed most of the man's identity but chose not to point it out. "Who told you to come here?" the man said coldly. "Leave now and never set foot here again. That Vermilion Bird isn't dead yet. Don't you want to save it?" Suzimo asked. At Suzimo's words, the man frowned slightly and froze for a moment. Then he laughed and said, "Kid, do you even know what you're saying?" Without answering directly, Suzimo took out a leaf from the Tree of Life from the True Fate world. This life leaf not only granted longevity but was also unparalleled in healing injuries. But the leaf was far too precious. In the past, only the celestial race could possess it. Later, after Suzimo found it, the life leaf had completely vanished from the world. Now, Suzimo was the only person on the entire continent who possessed it. He rarely gave it to others as the leaves were extremely rare. The Tree of Life required 1,000 years to grow a single leaf. The green life leaf glowed faintly. When the man saw it, his pupils shrank sharply. "Can you give it to me?" he asked, breathing heavily, his tone cautious. "How about we make a trade?" Suzimo said. "You're the new student the Academy brought in today, aren't you?" The man walked toward him step by step. "I heard you passed the 10th level." The southern luminous fire surrounded him, as though he were the ruler of this sea of flames. "Venerable Nu," Suzimo smiled. "What should I call you? Teacher Nu? Sounds awkward. Just call me teacher, though I have no intention of taking you as a disciple," Venerable Nu said with a wave of his hand. Indeed, the man before him was the master of Vermilion Bird Island, Venerable Nu. On this vast island, besides Rock Solid, there was only Venerable Nu himself. That much was not hard to guess. "What trade do you want to make?" Venerable Nu asked. "I believe teacher knows well the value of the life leaf," Suzimo smiled. "I won't give it to you for free. I want to enter the treasure tower." "The treasure tower isn't a place you can just enter." Venerable Nu shook his head. "Then there's no deal," Suzimo said directly, putting the life leaf away. "If you'd come before, I really wouldn't have been able to help," Venerable Nu said with a small smile. "But recently there just might be an opportunity. It depends on whether you dare to seek fortune in danger." "What opportunity?" Suzimo asked in puzzlement. Venerable Nu looked up and pointed to the sky. Seeing Suzimo frown, he continued, "You saw that phantom that tore open the heavens earlier, didn't you?" Suzimo nodded. In 7 days, great disaster will befall Heavenly Tao Academy. When that time comes, anything could be possible, Venerable Nu said plainly. He didn't avoid the subject, speaking of it with a calm expression. You want me to use the chaos to rob the place?
Su Yimo Frauen.
Venerable Nu shook his head. I meant help defend the academy. If we hold it, your merit will be great enough for you to enter the treasure tower normally. If the academy falls and is overrun, I can take you to the treasure tower, and you can take whatever you want. Deal, Su Zimo said after a moment's thought. Then he asked, Who are these people attacking the academy? What, are you scared? Venerable Nu asked with a smile. Not really, Su Zimo shook his head. I'm just curious. There's actually a force in the Overlord region bold enough to attack Heavenly Tao Academy? Even the immortal extinction sacred ground would think twice. Just a bunch of jumping clowns. Venerable Nu snorted coldly. But sometimes you have to admit, little devils can be troublesome. If you don't want to say, then forget it, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. It's not that I don't want to say. You'll know when the time comes. Venerable Nu replied with a small shake of his head. Now, can you give me the life leaf? When I've entered the treasure tower, I'll naturally give it to you, Su Zimo said. You don't trust me? Venerable Nu frowned. Chapter 850 The Story of Venerable Nu. Teacher, that's a strange thing to say. This is our first time meeting. How can we talk about trust? Su Zimo said with a smile. I want to save this vermilion bird. Venerable Nu sighed, then continued. If we wait until the Heavenly Tao Academy is destroyed, it will be too late to use the life leaf. Give it to me first. I keep my word without fail. This vermilion bird must be very important to you? Su Zimo asked. Important. Extremely important. Venerable Nu replied without the slightest hesitation. Su Zimo stepped into the sea of southern luminous fire, the demonic energy around his body surging to form a protective barrier. As he slowly approached the gravestone, he saw a few large characters carved into it. Grave of my beloved wife, Nanyu. Your wife? Su Zimo asked curiously. What's with all the questions? Venerable Nu said with a heavy tone. If you're not willing to give it, then forget it. Then I'll trust you this once, Su Zimo said. Either way, I'm getting into the treasure tower. When Su Zimo once again took out the life leaf, Venerable Nu took a deep breath. Rest assured I keep my word. Even if it costs me my life, I'll help you get in. I'm not sure, given the vermilion bird's current state, if a single life leaf can save it, Su Zimo said thoughtfully. If the vermilion bird had only just been injured, a single life leaf might have been enough. But it had been here for nearly 100 years, its body rotting away. It was only because the vermilion bird was a god beast, with the everlasting southern luminous fire that burned all things, and because of Venerable Nu's care over the years, that it had managed to hang on until now. Then, do you have any ideas? Venerable Nu asked urgently. Let me take a look first, Su Zimo said. Venerable Nu nodded. Led by Venerable Nu, the two walked toward the depths of the sea of fire. The flames rolled like thick clouds, parting in the middle to leave a wide path. When they reached the innermost area, a crystal altar appeared before them. The crystal was completely natural, crystal clear, and radiating rich spirit force. Inside the crystal lay a blood-red heart wrapped in white flames. Thump, thump, thump. The faint sound of its weak heartbeat could be heard. Around it grew many herbs, all of them plants that boosted vitality and life force. Su Zimo slowly approached the heart, demonic energy surging from his hands and covering its surface. Seeing Venerable Nu's worried look, he smiled. I'm just checking. Nothing will happen. After inspecting it, Su Zimo found that the vermilion bird's heart was even weaker than he had imagined. Many of its blood vessels were already necrotic, making reconnection to the outside body impossible. At this point, it was an isolated organ. Reviving the vermilion bird with it would be very difficult. Extremely difficult. How is it? Venerable Nu asked with a sigh. It can be saved, but it will be difficult, Su Zimo replied. You can save it? A light of hope flashed in Venerable Nu's eyes, his voice a little excited. He himself had no way forward. Asking for the life leaf had only been a desperate attempt. The vermilion bird is a fire-aligned beast, guardian of the far south, Suzimo said. Its true flame may not have the rebirth properties of the phoenix's nirvana fire, but with the life leaf as an aid, being reborn from the flames is not impossible. What should I do? Venerable Nu asked quickly. Prepare a grand formation to absorb the power of the sun. 3 days from now, during the night of extreme Een, fuse it with the southern luminous fire, Suzimo said. That should give at least a 50% chance of success. As for what kind of formation to use to absorb the sun's power, that's your problem. I understand. Venerable Nu nodded slightly. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll be going, Suzimo said, waving his hand. I'll be back in 3 days. Watching Suzimo's departing figure, Venerable Nu didn't stop him, only quietly murmured, "Thank you." Leaving the sea of southern luminous fire, Suzimo returned to the smithy. Rock Solid was still hammering away tirelessly, the clang, clang, clang of his work echoing non-stop. "Where did you go?" Rock Solid asked quickly when he saw Suzimo appear. "I forgot to tell you. There are some places on Vermilion Bird Island you can't go to." "I met the teacher," Suzimo said with a smile. "Ah!" Rock Solid froze, then quickly asked, "Don't tell me you went there?" "Oh? Looks like you know quite a bit," Suzimo said with a grin. "I don't know anything. Nothing at all," Rock Solid said, waving his hands. "I saw the Vermilion Bird's heart and agreed to help save it," Suzimo said directly, without hiding anything. "No way. The teacher didn't throw you out?" Rock Solid looked him over, disbelief in his eyes. "I have the life leaf," Suzimo said with a smile. "No wonder." Rock Solid put down the sword blank he was working on, sighed slightly, and sat down beside Suzimo. "To be honest, if you have the ability, please help the teacher. We'll remember the favor for life." "What's the story with that Vermilion Bird?" Suzimo asked. "To be precise, she should be our teacher's wife," Rock Solid said. Seeing Suzimo's puzzled look, Rock Solid fell into thought. "Our Heavenly Tao Academy teaches without discrimination. Among our students are not only humans but also demons, gods, cultivators of the Tao, titans, and even people of the dark primordial race. It's said that when our teacher, Venerable Nu, was young, he once saved a vermilion bird during his travels. Over time, even the teacher himself forgot about it. No one expected that, after cultivating for tens of thousands of years, that vermilion bird would take human form and come to the Heavenly Tao Academy. She passed the entrance trials and became a disciple under the teacher. And then, Suzimo asked curiously. She never revealed her true identity, and they simply stayed together as teacher and student, Rock Solid explained. But no one expected that they would, by some twist of fate, fall in love. Although the teacher loved her deeply, he never spoke openly about it and felt very conflicted. "Because she was from the beast race?" Suzimo asked. "No, because they were teacher and student." Rock Solid shook his head. The teacher values his reputation and feared gossip, so he always hovered on the edge of indecision. Shermu didn't mind and simply stayed by his side. 100 years ago, the teacher suddenly came back from outside covered in blood, barely alive. At that time, he was already on the verge of death. The dean personally treated him and gave only one conclusion: he could be saved, but the injuries were too severe. Shattered organs could be fixed, but the real problem was that his soul was broken and incomplete. Chapter 851, A Straw Hat in the Mist, Living as One Pleases. To treat the teacher's soul, repairing what's broken is the easy part. Our Heavenly Tao Academy is never short on pills, Rock Solid sighed. The real problem is the missing portions of the soul. A powerful soul fragment is needed to replace what's gone. Later, in order to save the teacher, the Vermilion Bird gave part of her own soul to complete his. So that's how it was. Suzimo nodded slightly. Without her soul, the Vermilion Bird fell unconscious, and it was only then that the teacher remembered he had once saved her. Rock Solid continued. The teacher used to have a very gentle personality, but from that day on, he never accepted another student. He numbed himself with alcohol every day, spending most of his time at the place where the vermilion bird was buried. I understand. If she can be saved, then let's save her. Su Zimo nodded. Thank you, Rock Solid said solemnly. Su Zimo waved his hand, not saying much more. If Venerable Nu really could help him enter the Heavenly Tao Academy, saving the vermilion bird wasn't a big deal, just some extra effort. But if the other side was lying, then just as he could save her, he could also kill. Aside from the three of them, there were no other living creatures on Vermilion Bird Island. Staying too long inevitably became dull. Su Zimo greeted Rock Solid, then left the island. The bluish flames tinged with red lit up half the sky. He stepped through the air, returning to the Heavenly Tao Academy. He planned to look around and explore the #1 academy of the Primordial Heartlands. At least it would make the trip worthwhile. Walking along the main street on the south side of the academy, both sides were lined with rows of Tao comprehension trees. These trees were extremely rare and greatly aided in understanding the Tao. It was said that one of the academy's founders, Taoist Ichi, had once sat beneath such a tree for 1,000 years in meditation, achieving sudden enlightenment in a single move. Lotus flowers fell from the heavens for 10,000 miles around, golden light shining everywhere, and strange phenomena filled the land. Passing through the tree-lined path, straight ahead stood a tall tower. This was the so-called Treasure Tower. The Treasure Tower was not open to outsiders, and Su Zimo only glanced at it from afar. The tower was about 10,000 feet high, entirely golden, with patterns of various treasure projections decorating its surface. Powerful formations were set all around it. Anyone who entered without permission would likely be reduced to ashes instantly under the formation's power. Walking further ahead, he reached the myriad martial platforms. It was said there were 100,000 combat platforms here, specifically for academy students to spar. Entering through the main gate, the place was bustling with activity. Figures moved actively on every platform, endless auras and spirit force clashing against one another. At that moment, Su Zimo felt a pat on his shoulder. He quickly turned around and saw Great Wisdom standing beside him. "You came into the academy and didn't even contact me," the monk said with a sigh. "I just hadn't had a chance to come out until now," Su Zimo replied with a smile. "I was just about to take a walk today when I ran into you." "So what, you came here to spar?" the monk asked. "I asked around. So far in this year's admissions, besides you and Mo Tianming, no one has made it past the 10th trial." "That's understandable. The 10 trials were harder than I imagined," Su Zimo nodded. "Especially the 10th, guarded by an emperor. Mo Tianming had passed using imperial might, otherwise, pure strength alone would have been impossible. Do you know that right now, the two of you are the talk of the academy?" the monk said with a smile. "A lot of people want to challenge you, to see what kind of geniuses could pass the 10th trial. What's the point of that?" Su Zimo waved it off. "These people are just bored. You don't get it. This time, the academy recruited many disciples from prestigious sects, including holy sons and daughters of imperial lineages and immortal sections. If they knew you, it'd be different. But you two are complete strangers to them, so they're curious." Su Zimo thought about it and realized that was true. This was his first time in the Overlord region, so it was natural they didn't know him. Mo Tianming was a lone cultivator. Without showing his strength, no one would know him either. While they were talking, a commotion broke out not far ahead. It seemed someone was fighting. Normally, that was nothing unusual for the myriad martial platforms. But these two seemed to have real anger between them. They'd even escalated to a life-and-death duel. Some students tried to mediate while others stood around to watch. "Let's go take a look," the monk said with interest. Su Zimo didn't reply. He was staring at one of the fighters in the arena. A familiar figure, someone he knew. A straw hat in the mist, living as one pleases. Ren Pingsheng, descendant of Grand Emperor Tun Ri. The last time he had seen Ren Pingsheng was back on the eastern continent, and it had been a long time since. Mainly, Su Zimo's growth had been too fast, and at the time Ren Pingsheng could no longer keep up. Unlike little Gui and Lin Ruhu, who he could still run into within the same sect, their contact had naturally faded over time. He had never expected to meet him again here at the Heavenly Tao Academy. He had originally planned to wait until after becoming an emperor to give benefits to those he'd known before, those who had helped him. Watching Ren Pingsheng fight another young man in a life-and-death duel on the platform, Su Zimo felt a wave of nostalgia. But instead of crowding forward like the monk to surround the stage, he sat at a seat far off, watching the fight with interest. "Are all the new students this year so disrespectful?" The young man in a green robe snorted. "Respect goes both ways, Wang Lang. You're nothing more than a dog following Zhang Changui. Why should I talk rules with you?" Ren Pingsheng said coldly. "Looking for death." Wang Lang's eyes grew dark as he glared at Ren Pingsheng. "If you want to fight, then fight. I'm not afraid of you," Ren Pingsheng said calmly. "Do you dare make it a life-and-death duel? Or will you just keep being a coward like always, disgusting people from the sidelines?" Wang Lang's face flushed red with anger. He glanced back discreetly at a group of people standing behind him. There were both men and women among them, all with extraordinary bearing, clearly from powerful backgrounds. One of them, a young man in a blue robe with a firm, resolute face, gave a slight nod. His aura was domineering, and he stood out even in the crowd. Seeing the man's signal, Wang Lang turned back and shouted, "Fine, then we fight." The Heavenly Tao Academy allowed life-and-death duels. As long as both sides signed a life-and-death agreement, they could battle on the platform without interference. By now, Ren Pingsheng was no longer the person he once was. His aura was extraordinary, and streams of black spirit force spread out around him. Chapter 852 Sun-Devouring Axe. As the black spirit force spread bit by bit, a powerful devouring force surged around Ren Pingsheng's body. By now, he had completely digested Grand Emperor Tunri's legacy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter the Heavenly Tao Academy through such fierce competition. It had been a long time since they last met, and he seemed to have grown much more than before. He wore a long black robe with a matching black cloak. The collar of the robe was high, wrapping completely around his neck. His gaze was calm, with a faint trace of anger. His thick black brows framed eyes in which a faint black spirit force churned. On his back he carried a giant axe. The axe was pitch black, engraved with streaks of white and purple. It was steeped in ancient aura, looking heavy and domineering. Ren Pingsheng raised his right hand, endless devouring power condensing within it. He struck straight at his opponent with a punch. Wang Lang, standing opposite him, was clearly no ordinary figure either. White spirit force surrounded him like foam, surging endlessly. The 8 pulse gates within his body were open, releasing the vast might of the God Meridian realm. At this stage, anyone who could enter the Heavenly Tao Academy was at least at the God Meridian realm, since everyone was making their final preparations for competing over the heaven's will. Their fists collided between them, detonating in an explosion. A wave of force burst out, sending both of their figures flying backward. Wang Lang's white spirit force was extremely resilient, endlessly flowing in waves, like a surging tide, supple yet forceful. "You're nothing special," Wang Lang said coldly. 3 explosive sounds rang from within his body, and then the white spirit force erupted in full force. The sound of rushing water could be heard. Behind him, waves and undercurrents actually took form. 7 styles of surging waves. Wang Lang called out in a low shout. Dark currents gathered in his fists, as if the waters of a vast lake were converging and crossing over each other, striking straight at Ren Pingsheng. "You're still not enough," Ren Pingsheng said calmly. In his fists, a pitch-black vortex appeared. The vortex spun rapidly like a black hole. From within it, waves of devouring power spread outward. For the moment, neither could gain the upper hand. Wang Lang's 7 styles of surging waves came one after another, each strike increasing in power several-fold. As for Ren Pingsheng, his devouring force was an innate advantage. It could swallow the opponent's power and send it back with equal force. How did those two end up fighting like this? Some confused onlookers asked curiously. I heard it's over a woman, someone whispered. No way. That's what I heard. But supposedly it had nothing to do with Wang Lang originally. It was between Ren Pingsheng and the Azure Dragon Crown Prince. Wang Lang just runs with the Crown Prince, so he stepped up to provoke Ren Pingsheng. The Azure Dragon Crown Prince? You mean? Someone said in shock. That's right, the ruler of the ancient dragon dynasty. Keep your voice down. Don't let him hear you. Hearing this, the others quickly nodded. Someone glanced to the side. In that group, the young man in the blue robe was the Azure Dragon Crown Prince. His gaze was domineering, faint pressure radiating from his body. Many people didn't even dare to stand too close to him. Beside him were several other men and women, all with extraordinary bearing, clearly from great sects or immortal clans. As the saying goes, like attracts like. The ancient dragon dynasty was one of the old imperial lineages of the Overlord region. One dynasty, two emperors. In the era when Jin Wu ushered in the flourishing imperial era, the Sky Shroud War God once nearly wiped out the dragon race. If, in that time of near extinction, any true dragons still existed, people would have naturally thought of the ancient dragon dynasty. That was many eras ago, when some drew dragon tendons, drank dragon blood, replaced their bones with dragon bones, and cultivated the dragon race's peerless arts. In the end, when the heavens will descended, they transformed into an ancient dragon, horned like a true dragon, winged like a heavenly rock. With their bloodline returning to its ancestral form, their dragon might shook the world, and they bore that era's heaven's will. The ancient dragon emperor, the dynasty's founder, was its progenitor and the emperor most closely tied to the dragon race. Many years later, the ancient dragon dynasty produced another peerless genius. He did not choose to transform into a dragon. Instead, he began as the weakest form of a snake. He grew into a python, then into a giant constrictor, and then into a flood dragon. Just as he was about to advance from flood dragon to true dragon, for reasons unknown, he crippled all of his own cultivation. This man was Grand Emperor Jianan. Grand Emperor Jianan's story was long, but before the students discussing the ancient dragon dynasty's history could continue, the duel on the arena stage had already changed. The two combatants had unleashed their true fates, boundless might pressing down from above. Wang Lang's true fate was a bloodthirsty ghost shark. Since his spirit force was of the water element, it matched this creature perfectly. The ghost shark's shadowy eyes locked onto Ren Pingsheng. Around it, raging waves crashed endlessly, the roaring sea breaking apart the very space around it. Ren Pingsheng was not to be outdone. He bore Grand Emperor Tun Ri's legacy, and had carved the sun-devouring axe into his own true fate. Behind him, the phantom of the sun-devouring axe shot up to the heavens. An axe, sharp, heavy, and unyielding. Not only did the phantom stand behind him, but he also slowly drew the actual sun-devouring axe, a Grand Emperor true treasure, from his back. In that moment, wind and sand whipped up as endless devouring power surged stronger and stronger. Ren Pingsheng slowly lifted the sun-devouring axe. The true fate behind him moved with him, merging as one. In an instant, an infinite suppressive force exploded outward. Everyone present felt as if they could hardly breathe. My ancestor once swept across an era, the 5 regions and 5 continents. None dared disobey. Ren Pingsheng said, his gaze deep. His calm words carried pride and dominance. Though the descendant today is incompetent and cannot pass on that glory, you are not the sort of petty man who can jump around unchecked. As his words fell, the sun-devouring axe struck forward with tremendous might. In an instant, the axe grew dozens of times larger. With each movement, the very world seemed to lose its color, even the sun above obscured. Thunderous booms rang out. The surrounding void, unable to bear the pressure, shattered even before the blow landed. As the sun-devouring axe fell, a vast swath of void collapsed. Wang Lang's face changed slightly, but the bloodthirsty ghost shark behind him still roared as it charged forward. Another booming explosion followed, making everyone feel as though their eardrums would split. The devouring force on the giant axe grew ever stronger. The ghost shark roared in defiance. Chapter 853, Azure Dragon Crown Prince. Who do you favor? Just as Su Zimo was watching the two fight with great interest, a soft voice suddenly sounded beside him. Su Zimo froze for a moment and quickly turned his head. He saw a woman gracefully sitting beside him. She wore a spotless white long dress. Her whole demeanor was like that of an immortal, aloof and pure. A beauty for the ages, a joy to behold. She had an oval face, a high nose bridge reminiscent of women from the western continent, and thin lips lightly tinted red. But her eyes were as calm as still water, revealing nothing within. The woman in white carried a faint fragrance. It was like plum blossoms, proud and self-appreciating. Her long skirt spread across the ground like a lotus slowly unfurling. Her skin was fair, the kind that looked as if it would bruise at the lightest touch. "Why aren't you speaking?" the woman asked with a smile, looking at Su Zimo. "Do we know each other?" Su Zimo asked doubtfully. "I know you, but you might not know me." The woman shook her head and said, "Anyone who passed the 10th floor of the Heavenly Dao Tower, many in the academy would want to know them." "Not interested." Su Zimo waved his hand and replied calmly. "You haven't answered my question?" The woman tilted her head, resting her elbows on her knees and supporting her chin, her tone filled with dissatisfaction.
I favor Ren Pingsheng, Su Zimo replied calmly.
"Why?" the woman in white asked again. "Ren Pingsheng cultivates the legacy techniques of Grand Emperor Tun Ri, very powerful. That Wang Lang probably isn't a disciple of an imperial lineage, so his cultivation method is weaker," Su Zimo said. "And their foundations are different. Ren Pingsheng's is clearly deeper." "I've heard you're from the true martial sacred ground," the woman in white said. "You ask too many questions," Su Zimo replied lightly. The two were complete strangers, and he truly didn't want to talk much. "I'm just curious." The woman in white looked very wronged. Her eyes even grew a little misty. She looked pitifully at Su Zimo. "Don't you like me?" "Seduction." Su Zimo frowned at her. Her behavior was strange to him. He could tell she was usually very cold. Not just her looks, but her whole temperament suggested a stranger's keep-away aura. "Just tell me, answer a few of my questions," the woman said, pulling at Su Zimo's arm and gently shaking it, like she was acting spoiled. "Weirdo," Su Zimo muttered, getting up and leaving. Watching his departing back, the woman in white was stunned for a moment, then chuckled softly to herself. "Doesn't know how to appreciate charm. This makes things difficult." On the arena stage, Ren Pingsheng held the sun-devouring axe, like a true emperor descending. Devouring power swirled around him. Each surge of might was stronger than the last. Wang Lang could only defend passively, his body already covered in blood. The bloodthirsty ghost shark behind him struggled fiercely. The sounds of explosions boomed across the arena. The stage was built from heavenly Dao crystal, able to withstand even the attacks of arcane immortals. As a grand emperor true treasure, the sun-devouring axe still radiated imperial might. And it had been tempered by the heaven's will, giving it an advantage over most weapons. Another explosion rang out. Wang Lang couldn't dodge in time. The huge axe blade came down within mere tens of centimeters of his head. He could even feel the oppressive force from the axe, along with the suffocating breath of death. At last, Wang Lang, who had been barely holding on, couldn't endure anymore. He shouted toward the stage below, "Crown Prince, save me!" Everyone knew he was calling to the Azure Dragon Crown Prince, and they were all curious what the Crown Prince's reaction would be. "Ao Nan, best not to get involved in this," someone beside him reminded. A life-and-death duel with a life-and-death agreement signed was troublesome to interfere in. It was not like an ordinary sparring match. The Azure Dragon Crown Prince's true name was Ao Nan. His expression was ugly, his eyes weighing the pros and cons. If he interfered, trouble was likely. But if he didn't, everyone knew Wang Lang served him loyally. If he abandoned him now, what would others think? Who would dare serve him again? Enough! As the sun-devouring axe forced Wang Lang into a corner with nowhere to retreat, a loud shout suddenly rang out. Within that shout was a faint dragon's roar. It made Ren Pingxing's head tremble for an instant, his hands slowing just enough for Wang Lang to narrowly escape death. The Azure Dragon Crown Prince has made his move, someone said with interest. Now things are getting fun. Ren Pingxiang and Wang Lang were both relatively unknown in the academy. Their fight wasn't especially interesting. But if a holy son of an imperial lineage got dragged into the mess, that was something many people were happy to see. That was when it became entertaining. Stop here, Ao Nan. The Azure Dragon Crown Prince looked at Ren Pingxiang and spoke lightly. You're breaking the duel rules. Ren Pingxing raised his head, meeting Ao Nan's gaze without fear, and said calmly, in a life-and-death duel, without both participants' consent, no third party was allowed to interfere. That was an academy rule. Violation meant punishment based on the outcome. In the Heavenly Dao Academy, everything was equal, at least in principle. Even a holy son of an emperor lineage immortal sect couldn't escape punishment. Of course, this so-called equality was only as equal as it could be. Just like people were always ranked high or low, true equality didn't exist. Not in reality and not in theory. I said stop here. Ao Nan didn't answer directly, but his eyes flashed with menace as he spoke again. Ren Pingxing frowned slightly. Ao Nan had indeed broken the rules, but the Academy's punishment likely wouldn't be too severe. Because he hadn't been injured, the penalty would be based on the actual result. What's wrong? Dissatisfied? Ao Nan said lightly. Then fight me. If you have the guts, face me in a life-and-death duel. No surrender, no survival. When he spoke those last 4 words, his tone brimmed with killing intent. It was strong enough for anyone to feel. Pingxiang, don't accept his challenge. Just then, a woman's voice called from afar. A young woman in a purple coat, her face delicate and pretty, hurried over. Her complexion was pale, as if she had just recovered from a serious illness. Her long hair was tied back in a braided ponytail with a purple ribbon. Her eyes were full of worry. When she appeared, the crowd watching below grew noisy. That's her. No mistake. She's the one the Azure Dragon Crown Prince and Ren Pingxiang are fighting over. This is interesting, but she looks pretty ordinary to me. Chapter 854. The weak have no dignity. You don't understand, do you? Liking someone isn't just about looks. I know that from experience, someone nearby said with a laugh. The crowd looked at the young woman and began whispering among themselves. Pingxiang, come down. Let's go. The woman shouted. Xiao Xiao, why are you here? Ren Pingxing's expression changed slightly. He quickly said, why did you leave your room instead of resting? Your body. If I didn't come out, how long would you two keep making a scene? Xiao Xiao replied. Come with me. I don't want to keep backing down anymore, Ren Pingxiang said after a brief silence, then turned to Ao Nan. I will fight you, but right now it's my fight with him. Holding the sun-devouring axe, he stepped toward Wang Lang. Crown Prince, save me. Save me. Wang Lang kept retreating, shouting desperately. At this point, he had no fighting spirit left. He only wanted to survive and leave here alive. Inside, he regretted his rashness. The Azure Dragon Crown Prince frowned slightly. Unless both sides stopped, a life-and-death duel could not be interrupted in front of so many people. Of course, he had never really intended to stop it. He had only shown the people present that he had tried. But there were some things that simply couldn't be helped. Wang Lang kept begging for help. But Ren Pingxing's aura was overwhelming, and the sun-devouring axe in his hand released waves of devouring power that pressed down on him. Let him go and we'll fight, the Azure Dragon Crown Prince said lightly. Weren't you so insistent that I leave Xiao Xiao alone? Killing him won't help, you know I'm the real cause. Ren Pingxing frowned slightly at his words. What Ao Nan said was true, killing Wang Lang was useless. He was just a lackey. If the master remained alive, there would always be more lackeys. If you're afraid, I advise you to quit early, the Azure Dragon Crown Prince continued. I'm the one who's right for Xiao Xiao. That way you won't end up in total disgrace. Ao Nan, what are you talking about? I'm not interested in you, Shang Xiao Xiao said coldly, looking at him. Feelings can be cultivated. I have all the time in the world. Ao Nan laughed. My ancient dragon dynasty is an imperial lineage, with 2 emperors in its history. What status do you have, Ren Pingxing? Do you not know? Why compete with me when you don't even have the courage to face me directly? Hearing the Azure Dragon Crown Prince's words, some in the audience began speaking in low voices, whether intentionally or not. The volume wasn't too loud or too soft, just enough for Ren Pingxing to hear. Hiding behind a woman? He might as well just quit. Exactly. If you need a woman to protect you, how can you compete with the Crown Prince? If the ending is destined to be failure, it's better to give up early and not waste anyone's time. Ren Pingxing's face turned pale with anger. He swung the sun-devouring axe heavily. With a roar from his throat, he cleaved his opponent in 2. He turned to look at the Azure Dragon Crown Prince. Get up here, he said flatly. You want a life-and-death duel with me? The Crown Prince asked, slightly stunned. Yes, Ren Pingxing replied calmly. Pingxing, what are you doing? You're not his match, Shang Xiao Xiao shouted anxiously from below. Xiao Xiao, this is my dignity, Ren Pingxing said, turning his head. I will reclaim my dignity, even if it costs me my life. Ren Pingxing, you idiot, Shang Xiao Xiao cried in distress. If you die, I will never live on alone. Hearing their exchange, the Azure Dragon Crown Prince seemed slightly jealous. He tossed the life-and-death contract over. If you dare, sign it. Otherwise, when you see me in the future, take a different path. Just as Ren Pingxing was about to sign, a light laugh came from afar. Pingxing, long time no see. Hearing that familiar voice, Ren Pingxing froze. His pupils shrank sharply as he looked up in disbelief. In front of him, the outline of a man from his memories appeared once again. You? Ren Pingxing stared blankly at Su Zimo. He had never thought they would meet here in this way. Long time no see, Su Zimo said with a smile, nodding. Master, Ren Pingxing said softly. That was how he had always addressed Su Zimo in the past. Back then, he had chosen to follow Su Zimo, and in doing so, he obtained the inheritance of his ancestor, Grand Emperor Tun Ri. But later, the chances for them to meet grew fewer and fewer. Su Zimo's growth was so fast that Ren Pingxing could no longer keep up with his world. Eventually, he took his ancestor's inheritance and left the eastern continent, training himself all the way until he achieved his current strength. Come down and talk, Su Zimo said, beckoning. Ren Pingxing hesitated, glancing at the Azure Dragon Crown Prince. Master, please allow me to finish this duel. If I survive, I will follow you again. A fight you know you can't win, yet you insist on fighting, it's nothing but foolishness, Su Zimo said lightly. This is my dignity, Ren Pingxing quickly defended. The weak, what dignity do they have? What right do they have to speak of dignity? Su Zimo said, begging others, forcing a smile, constantly saying thank you. What is this? Are you living only for yourself? Hearing Su Zimo's words, Ren Pingxing looked toward Shang Xiao Xiao. She stood there, tears rolling uncontrollably down her face. In that moment, he felt a stab of pain in his heart. Kid, you'd better not meddle. This is between him and me, Ao Nan said to Su Zimo with a warning tone. If you don't sign, then at least settle this somehow or I won't let Xiao Xiao go. You want a life-and-death duel? I'll sign with you, Su Zimo said with a smile. He reached out and took the life-and-death contract from Ren Pingxing's hand. Kid, I'm not interested in you, Ao Nan said flatly. What's wrong? Are you scared? Su Zimo said with a smile. Scared you won't even know how you died, Ao Nan replied darkly. Su Zimo chuckled and signed his name on the contract. Master, Ren Pingxing said, looking at Su Zimo with both hesitation and gratitude. No matter what, you once followed me, Su Zimo said, waving his hand. Anyway, I'm too lazy to say anything extra. As Su Zimo walked toward the arena, the white-dressed woman from before returned. She sat down on the steps with interest, watching. The crowd below also began buzzing with discussion. Doesn't he look familiar? I think this guy is one of the two who reached the 10th floor of the Heavenly Dao Tower earlier this year. Someone studied him for a while before speaking, still uncertain. Yeah, it looks just like him. It shouldn't be wrong. As more and more people recognized Su Zimo, the crowd gathered at the Myriad Martial platform grew larger. After all, everyone at the Heavenly Dao Academy was curious about this year's so-called two prodigies. Chapter 855 Holy Sons of Imperial Lineages. The Azure Dragon Crown Prince frowned slightly. He could hear the discussions around him, so this guy was one of those two who were hyped up before? He felt half skeptical. It wasn't that he doubted Su Zimo's identity, but rather his strength. This year, many people had come to participate in the Heavenly Dao Academy's admissions, including many holy sons and daughters from imperial lineages he personally knew. Everyone understood the difficulty of the Heavenly Dao Tower. Now, to think that only two people had managed to easily reach the top, it was only natural for him to feel unconvinced. As a holy son, he naturally carried pride in his heart. The level of people he had interacted with since childhood had led him to believe he was one of the top geniuses in the world. He neither believed nor allowed that someone could be stronger than him. At this moment, as news from the Myriad Martial platform spread, more and more people gathered here. Look, that's Yin Luohang. Yin Luohang? Isn't that the holy son of the Compassionate Voyage Sacred Ground? Even he came. Not just Yin Luohang, Ming Hu and Zhang Chunyang are here too. Shouts rang out from all around. Hearing these cries, the crowd looked increasingly shocked. Ming Hu was the holy son of the Heaven Nether Sacred Ground, while Zhang Chunyang was the holy son of the Pure Yang Sacred Ground. Each of them were from imperial lineages. No one expected that a single life-and-death duel would draw them all out. What's there to be surprised about? Su Zimo and Ao Nan, one is the holy son of an imperial lineages, the other is a recently famous genius who reached the 10th floor of the Heavenly Dao Tower. A life-and-death duel between them means one will definitely die. You think people wouldn't come to see? Someone else explained, everyone wants to gauge each other's strength, so they can prepare accordingly. And what better stage than a life-and-death duel? In short, the students buzzed with discussion. Most of those gathered here were newly admitted this year. But gradually, many older students, driven by curiosity, also came over. Azure Dragon Crown Prince, do you dare to go up? The Heaven Nether Sacred Ground's holy son, Ming Hu, laughed loudly from the side. You're not scared of him, are you? Ming Hu, don't you think your provocation is pretty low level? Ao Nen said calmly. But you'll still fall for it. Ming Hu laughed. Right, Zhang Chunyang? The Pure Yang Sacred Ground's holy son, Zhang Chunyang, smiled and nodded. He said, Ao Nan, why not give it a try? I don't believe he's that strong. We know your strength well, and we trust it. Ao Nan ignored the two and quietly weighed the pros and cons. If Su Zimo were just an ordinary student, he would have agreed to a life-and-death duel without hesitation. But someone who could reach the 10th floor of the Heavenly Dao Tower was clearly no simple figure. He didn't want to make trouble with such a person for no reason. Su Zimo leaned casually against the railing of the arena and said with a smile, If you're scared, just apologize to Ren Pingsheng. From now on, take a detour when you see him, and this matter will be over. You're going too far. Ao Nen lifted his head, his eyes dark. I don't want to offend you, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid of you. If my ancient dragon dynasty wanted you dead, there are 10,000 ways to make it happen. Ancient dragon dynasty? Su Zimo replied with interest. That's perfect. I'm from the true martial sacred ground. We can see who dies first when we get the chance. True martial sacred ground? Ao Nen froze when he heard the name. Su Zimo had only told Li Changhe about his identity as the holy son of the true martial sacred ground. At the moment, only some higher-ups in the academy knew, ordinary disciples didn't. There were quite a few imperial lineages on the primordial heartlands, so Aonan didn't immediately think of one from the eastern continent. But when he carefully savored the words true martial, a spark flashed in his mind, and he remembered. Zhenwu, the very first Grand Emperor of the imperial era, the one who began it all. That title alone was enough to shake the world. It would not be an exaggeration to call him the most illustrious emperor in all of history. The hope and glory he brought to the human race could not be matched by any other emperor. One sect, for emperors, Aonan said, his expression unpleasant. Although the ancient Dragon Dynasty had produced two emperors in terms of heritage and power, they were far inferior to the other side. Among imperial lineages, there were absolute gaps in strength. Why would the holy son of the true martial sacred ground become my enemy over someone like him? Aonan's tone eased slightly. As far as I know, he's just a rogue cultivator. His ancestor may have been the heir to an emperor, but that was long ago, and his line has fallen. Do I need to report my actions to you? Su Zimo said flatly. I'll give you only two choices. Either fight me in a life-and-death duel, or take a detour when you see Ren Pingxing from now on. Choose for yourself. Holy Sun Su, aren't you being too overbearing? Aonan's expression darkened. Your true martial sacred ground may be powerful, but do you think you can act so arrogantly in our middle continent? With that sentence, he was trying to set the true martial sacred ground against the entire middle continent. Otherwise, relying on just the ancient Dragon Dynasty, he wouldn't dare provoke Su Zimo. Alone, they were not enough to face him. All right, stop giving yourself too much credit. Su Zimo waved his hand and said, This is just between you and me, it has nothing to do with our sections. If you don't dare fight, then leave now. Fine. Remember what you said, that this is just between us and won't involve our sections. Aonan let out a breath and waved his hand. I'll accept this life-and-death duel. His only concern earlier had been the true martial sacred ground. If he killed Su Zimo, and the true martial sacred ground came for revenge, his sect wouldn't be able to protect him. Now that Su Zimo dared say this with so many witnesses, even the true martial sacred ground, powerful as it was, could not act without restraint. With a dragon's roar, Aonan's figure turned into a streak of purple light. The next instant, he was already on the arena stage. Please give me your guidance, Aonan said calmly. In a life-and-death duel, there's no such thing as guidance. Su Zimo waved his hand. He spoke directly, too lazy to waste words. Clenching his right fist, he gathered endless spirit force and struck at his opponent. Aonan was not to be outdone. His right hand was suddenly covered in a layer of purple scales, lightning flickering across them. Their fists collided. Aonan's strength was extremely fierce, like an ancient fierce dragon, thunder exploding as they clashed. Both were forced back several steps. Aonan frowned slightly. He could tell his opponent was testing him, testing his strength. The next moment, Su Zimo's lips curled into a slight smile. From his fist, demonic energy surged, thick demonic clouds rolling. The space around them shattered, and another punch, carrying overwhelming power, crashed toward him. The instant Aonan's right fist made contact with that power, the scales on its surface shattered completely.
Chapter 856, Python và Python.
A powerful force exploded out, accompanied by scales shattering, flesh splitting open, revealing the cold white bones underneath. Aonan's figure was sent flying backward, crashing heavily into the guardrail of the arena. With a loud bang, the sight made everyone's hearts jump. A few holy sons from the imperial lineages below frowned slightly. They knew Aonan's strength well, yet now he seemed so utterly outmatched. At this moment on the arena stage, Aonan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and slowly stood up. You're looking for death, he said coldly to Su Zimo. The purple robe around his body fluttered in the wind as a powerful aura burst from within him. Hidden within it was a faint draconic might pressing down. This is all you've got? Su Zimo gave a light laugh. With a metallic ring, Shadow Tyrant drew itself from its sheath on his back. Su Zimo directly 19 forms of Dao seeking, carrying an awe-inspiring blade intent as he attacked. On the opposite side, a cracking sound echoed. Ao Nan's body began to be covered layer by layer in purple dragon scales. The dragon scales were like battle armor, covering him from head to toe. At this moment, although Ao Nan was not a true dragon, he was absolutely akin to a dragon man, possessing the might of dragons. Facing the incoming shadow tyrant, Ao Nan raised both hands, intending to meet the strike head-on. On the surface of the dragon scales, purple lightning crackled fiercely. With a boom, blade intent and lightning spread out together. A surge of force burst out from Shadow Tyrant. I possess the body of a dragon god. How can you compare? Ao Nan coldly snorted. Thunder Seal execution. The moment his words fell, the lightning around him began to gather. Endless lightning roared violently. It formed a tadpole-shaped seal that floated in midair. Then, from within that seal, endless lightning poured down, transforming into a storm of thunder, mountains, and rivers, crashing toward Su Zimo with overwhelming force. Su Zimo raised his hand, Shadow Tyrant stirring endless wind and clouds as it slashed toward the seal. In an instant, the lightning within the seal condensed into a single stream, clashing with Shadow Tyrant. Ao Nan took the chance to pull back, slightly crouching with both arms crossed in front of his head. On his forehead, an identical thunder seal appeared. Heaven-devouring annihilation. His eyes snapped open, and the next moment, his entire body transformed into a streak of light that merged into the thunder seal from before. In that instant, the seal's power skyrocketed. The people below the stage, seeing this, subconsciously stepped a few paces back. They were afraid of being injured by the aftershocks. They could fully sense the terrifying power contained in the seal. This Ao Nan, he's using his full strength right from the start. Looks like the pressure is huge. That thunder seal was supposedly created by the ancient dragon emperor himself. Wasn't it? Not bad at all. Thunder is the ultimate force of yang and rigidity. Let's see how the opponent handles it. As discussions spread below, the next moment, everyone's eyes widened in shock. On the arena stage, Su Zimo made no move to defend or dodge. He simply stood there, taking the thunder head-on. The thunder seal floated high in the air, endless lightning crashing down onto Su Zimo's body. Not only did it fail to destroy him, Su Zimo's expression remained calm, his brow not even furrowing, as if he could not even feel the pain. This guy, the woman in white below muttered softly. He's looking down on him. I thought you were stronger, Su Zimo said, shaking his head in disappointment. Shadow Tyrant was raised high above his head, endless blade intent and momentum gathering together, obliterating the void as it came down. Half the sky was swallowed under the blade. Naturally, this included the floating thunder seal. In the next moment, with a deafening boom, the part of the sky where the thunder seal hung collapsed completely. A scream rang out. Ao Nan's body was blasted from the center of the explosion. Everyone looked at this scene, exchanging baffled glances, unsure what to say. At this moment, Ao Nan's dragon scales were shattered, his body utterly battered. Not a single patch of flesh was unscathed. A holy son of the imperial lineages is just so weak, Su Zimo said. Ao Nan's eyelids lifted slightly, but for once, he didn't throw any harsh words back at Su Zimo. He lowered his head to look at his severely injured body, his expression calm. A very unusual spirit force began gathering around him. Su Zimo frowned slightly. This energy was unlike any he had encountered before. It carried a heavy beastly aura, as if it wasn't spirit force at all, but true demonic beast energy. They say Ao Nan inherited the legacy of Grand Emperor Jia Nan. Looks like it's true. This beast-type spirit force is unique to Grand Emperor Jia Nan. Ordinary people can't cultivate it. Below, those who knew the inside story discussed with interest. Su Zimo looked up to see Ao Nan's entire body starting to change. His dragon scales shifted from the large purple scales before to smaller, denser ones. Then Ao Nan's legs transformed into a single tail. His body continued to change. Black and white light shot skyward from around him, dyeing the entire sky in two colors, split evenly into black and white. A python? Su Zimo watched the transformation with surprise. He had expected Ao Nan to transform into a dragon. After all, dragons were one of the oldest and most powerful beast clans, far stronger than any python. The sky changed color, and Ao Nan's body transformation continued. As his body altered, his head also began to change. A deep, oppressive roar echoed out. It didn't sound at all like something a human should make. The next moment, as one roar after another rang out, Su Zimo felt the pressure on him surge, and a wave of blood and stench swept toward him. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood. "What is that?" one of the watching students said in surprise, staring at the changes on the arena stage. Ao Nan had disappeared, replaced by a massive two-headed python. The python's body was over 100 meters long, its scales black and white, interlocked in a crisscross pattern. The scales were tightly packed and extremely tough. The most striking feature, however, was its two heads. One head was like some primeval behemoth, savage and violent. The other head was particularly eerie, surrounded by countless small snakes coiling around it, like hair, dense and swarming, enough to trigger trypophobia. Heaven-devouring rainbow python and earth demon underworld python. Zhang Chunyang, standing below, said this with a grave expression. This was Grand Emperor Jia Nan's ultimate technique. Everyone below felt their hearts skip a beat. Being stared at by those two snake heads sent a chill straight to the soul. Chapter 857. Who do you think you are talking to? Looking at the monster in front of him, Su Zimo frowned slightly. This beast-like two-headed python made the surrounding people feel a little shocked as well. Though it was a python, its aura far surpassed that of a true dragon. The story of Grand Emperor Jialan continued. Back then, he destroyed all his cultivation and started again from being a python. But this time he did not cultivate the dragon transformation technique passed down since the time of the ancient dragon emperor. Instead, he created his own ultimate technique. The ultimate form of any species is its most powerful form. Starting as a small python, Grand Emperor Jialan eventually cultivated into a two-headed python. One head represented the heaven-devouring rainbow python. The other represented the earth demon underworld python. Heaven-devouring and earth demon, 7 colors against 9 nether. Grand Emperor Jialan was recognized by later generations as a prodigy, making outstanding contributions to the transformation of species. It is said that although his ultimate technique was powerful, the cultivation conditions were extremely harsh and the success rate was very low. So most of the holy sons who came from the ancient dragon dynasty in later generations cultivated the dragon transformation technique left by the ancient dragon emperor. But this Ao Nan actually chose to cultivate the ultimate technique, and what was more frightening was that he actually succeeded. "Boy, no matter how rich you are, today you will fall to my hands." The two-headed python spoke in human tongue, its gaze gloomy. "I haven't heard the word defeat in a long time. If you have the ability, I'd like to try it," Su Zimo said with a light smile. Shadow Tyrant in his hand slowly rose, his gaze flickering slightly. The two-headed python roared angrily at the sky. Its massive body brought with it a gust of bloody wind as it pounced forward, its thick tail shattering all the surrounding void as it swung toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not retreat in the slightest, directly slashing his blade toward the tail. Every one of his moves carried the style of 19 forms of Dao-seeking. In an instant, heaven and earth lost their color, and the void collapsed. The two fought until the sky was dark and the earth dimmed, making the watching students feel shocked. Clearly they were the same age, yet could be this powerful. That Ao Nan guy really looks angry. So what? The other party doesn't seem afraid of him at all. Looks like we should start paying attention to this Su Zimo. No matter what, only one of them will walk away alive. The loser will sink forever into hell. The defense of this two-headed python was astonishing, far stronger than the so-called divine dragon. This made Su Zimo somewhat moved. The ultimate form of a species was indeed extraordinary. The next moment, the two-headed python slightly raised both its heads. Two streams of spiritual energy, one black and one white, gushed forth from them, shooting directly at Su Zimo. The two-headed python represented the two extremes of heaven and earth, yin and yang. Not to be underestimated. The black and white spiritual energy intertwined, constantly crisscrossing toward him. Wherever they passed, the void was annihilated and all collapsed. "Gate of Eternity," Su Zimo shouted. A white light shot into the sky from above his head, enveloping him in a special state. In the eternal state, he was essentially undying and indestructible. At least in the primordial heartlands, no one could kill him. As the two streams of yin and yang surged past, the void around Su Zimo was obliterated. The two-headed python raised its heads and roared in anger. Su Zimo walked out of the void unscathed. He looked calmly at the other party, the heaven-shattering power in his body surging endlessly. Countless power vortices spun wildly within his body and from his divine soul. 100-meter-tall heaven-shattering giant stepped out from behind him, instantly causing the heavens and earth to quake and the ground to tremble. "What is that?" someone asked in confusion upon seeing the scene. God's soul or secret art? Even the most knowledgeable people did not recognize it at this moment, because the heaven-shattering God Scripture was a product of the outer heavens. With a snap, the heaven-shattering giant lowered its head, grabbed the two heads of the python with both hands, and squeezed. Although the python struggled desperately, the gap in strength was overwhelming in every aspect. Like an ant, it was easily lifted by the giant. Then it was smashed heavily onto the dueling platform below. With a loud boom, the entire world seemed to tremble. The two-headed python was smashed hard onto the platform. The platform, which could normally withstand the attacks of immortals, now showed cracks. The rumbling continued without pause. The sound made the ears of those present ache. Everyone felt as though they were watching two entirely different beings. Like an adult beating a child, the heaven-shattering giant pressed the two-headed python under its palm, playing with and grinding it down. The python had no strength left to resist. As Su Zimo frantically gathered more heaven-shattering power, the giant grew even stronger. "Stop!" At this moment, someone at the side could not stand it anymore and shouted loudly. Su Zimo slightly raised his head to see a young man in green robes slowly walking up. "That's Yin Luohang," someone next to him said. "Is he stepping in for Ao Nan?" "That shouldn't be. There doesn't seem to be much friendship between them." The surrounding people were puzzled. He said, "Young Master Su, I know it's inappropriate for me to intervene in this matter, but please spare his life." "Why?" Su Zimo asked calmly. "Your face doesn't seem to mean anything to me." "I know," Yin Luohang quickly said. "I'll have him admit defeat and publicly apologize to you and your friend in front of everyone here. As long as you can let him go, you can name your conditions." "Sorry, I have no conditions, and the things I want you can't give." Su Zimo shook his head. "Young Master Su, he is the holy son of the ancient dragon dynasty," Yin Luohang said. "Although the ancient dragon dynasty is not as powerful as your true martial sacred ground, those people are all extreme madmen in their actions. If you can avoid provoking them, best not to." "Are you threatening me?" Su Zimo narrowed his eyes slightly. "No, I'm just stating a fact." Yin Luohang shook his head. As soon as his words fell, there was a loud boom. Su Zimo raised his blade and cut off the head of the heaven-devouring rainbow python. Losing one head, the two-headed python let out a shrill roar. It was now covered in blood, its consciousness hazy. It was in a dazed, muddled state. Seeing this, a trace of anger flashed between Yin Luohang's brows, but it was quickly hidden. "Young Master Su, do you really have to be this stubborn?" Yin Luohang continued. As soon as his words fell, another tragic cry rang out. The other head of the earth demon underworld python was also cut off. In an instant, blood flowed like a river, and the two-headed python lay dying on the ground, clearly beyond saving. Very good, Yin Luohang said through clenched teeth. Fight if you want, or get lost if you don't, Su Zimo said indifferently. Who do you think you're talking to? Chapter 858. Strange white-dressed woman. Hearing Su Zimo's words, Yin Luohang's gaze turned gloomy. But he still forcefully suppressed the displeasure in his heart and directly turned away from the dueling platform. Yin, since when did you get so close with Ao Nan? Ming Hu chuckled from the side. You actually spoke up for him. These holy sons from the imperial lineages had always been secretly competing against each other. They basically wouldn't become friends. So Yin Luohang's actions today surprised him a little. Yin Luohang lifted his head and gave Ming Hu a faint glance, but didn't answer, and directly left. At this moment on the dueling platform, the two-headed python was already completely on its last breath. Without its two heads, blood couldn't stop pouring from its necks. Su Zimo held Shadow Tyrant in his hand, grinned, and said, "No need to suffer anymore. Let me send you off on your final journey." With a loud boom, cracks spread across the entire dueling platform, and the two-headed python's body was split entirely in two, dead beyond dead. "Clean this up," Su Zimo said to the person in charge of the platform, then walked down. He ignored the astonished gazes around him and walked toward Renpingsheng. His attitude was clear. Renpingsheng was under his protection, and anyone wanting to make a move on him would have to go through Su Zimo first. Under the platform, the white-dressed woman found it amusing to watch and remarked, "No wonder. I couldn't see through him either." Then her gaze grew deep again, as if she was pondering something. Su Zimo walked up to Renpingsheng and said with a smile, "Let's go. Let's have a meal together." "Young master." Renpingsheng took a deep breath, and quickly followed with Shang Xiaoxiao in tow. "How do you know that Ao Nan?" Su Zimo asked. Xiaoxiao was originally a disciple of the ancient Dragon Dynasty, Renpingsheng explained. "We met during one training expedition. Originally, I also planned to join the ancient Dragon Dynasty, but because of Ao Nan, it ended with nothing. We had wanted to get far away from the Overlord region, hoping that in another place we could get rid of his harassment. But this guy kept sending people to assassinate me, and Xiaoxiao's injuries were from saving me." At this point, Renpingsheng's expression held some guilt. "We had no choice but to come to the Heavenly Tao Academy to find a place of refuge. We didn't expect he would still chase us like a lingering ghost." Su Zimo nodded slightly. "Young master, will this make things difficult for you?" Renpingsheng quickly asked. After all, Ao Nan was a holy son of the ancient Dragon Dynasty. They definitely won't let this go easily. The true martial sacred ground is too far from here and won't be able to intervene in time. "It's fine. I've already destroyed more than a few lineages." Su Zimo waved it off. On the current primordial heartlands, there were very few enemies worth his attention. Even if they were strong, if he couldn't beat them, he could still leave, and they wouldn't be able to keep him. Not to mention he still had Paimon and Seven Face. The Heavenly Tao Academy had dozens of places for students to eat. They were all scattered throughout the academy. The three of them found a restaurant and went inside. Along the way, Renpingsheng also introduced Su Zimo to Shang Xiaoxiao. "What are your plans from here?" Su Zimo asked. Ao Nan had already been killed by him, so for now, Renpingsheng and Shang Xiaoxiao were in no danger. Even if the strong of the ancient Dragon Dynasty came, they would only come for Su Zimo, and for a while wouldn't trouble Renpingsheng. "I've decided to take Xiaoxiao and leave the Middle Continent, planning to return to our Eastern Continent," Renpingsheng said. "Oh!" Su Zimo looked at him with a bit of surprise. He had thought the other might leave the Overlord region, but hadn't expected him to leave the Middle Continent entirely. The Middle Continent was the strongest of the 5 continents, recognized as such. Powerful figures from the other 4 continents would do their best to come here to train. As if guessing Su Zimo's thoughts, Renpingsheng smiled and explained, "Right now I've already entered the God Meridian realm, and I've pretty much digested the inheritance from ancestor Tun Ri. As long as I don't provoke the imperial lineages, I can protect myself. Our Ren clan's ancestral home is in the Eastern Continent. Going back this time is also returning to our roots. The two of us will find a hidden, idyllic place and live together. That's enough. Su Zimo suddenly realized that there were many people in this world who, after going in circles, always ended up back at the starting point. In their youth, they longed to become strong, to make their names known to the world, even to become a grand emperor. But after experiencing the blades and swords of the martial world, the scheming and treachery, some would wish to withdraw from the struggles, believing that true happiness lay in simplicity. Ren Pingsheng before him was the perfect example. Perhaps he was tired of it all and no longer had the heart to become stronger. Life had split into two paths before them. One was Su Zimo's, continuously becoming stronger, and after becoming strong, seeking to become even stronger. The other was Ren Pingsheng's. That day, he and Ren Pingsheng spoke at length. From their separation until now, Ren Pingsheng recounted his training journey, and Su Zimo mostly listened. All right, when you return to the Eastern continent, I'll let the true martial sacred ground know. They'll keep an eye out for you, Su Zimo said. Thank you, young master. Ren Pingsheng nodded. I hope you two can spend the rest of your lives in the way you like. Su Zimo knew the other's mind was made up and didn't try to stop him. After parting with Ren Pingsheng, the sky had already begun to darken. The nights in the Heavenly Tao Academy were still as vibrant as flowers in bloom. On his way back to Vermilion Bird Island, Su Zimo once again met the white-dressed woman from before. It seemed she had been waiting there for him. What a coincidence, meeting again, the white-dressed woman said with a smile. Is it?
Su Zimo replied in Daifern.
The white-dressed woman didn't seem embarrassed, just smiled and followed him. Vermilion Bird Island did not allow outsiders to enter, but Su Zimo couldn't be bothered with her. However, when he stepped into the air toward Vermilion Bird Island, he found that she was still following behind, entering the island with him. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He headed toward where Rock Solid was forging iron. Even from a long distance, the clang 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 of hammering reached his ears. Su Zimo found that his senior brother seemed to do nothing all day except forge. Junior brother Su, you're back. Shi Jian looked up, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and greeted him with a smile. Su Zimo pointed at the woman following behind him. The white-dressed woman didn't mind, still smiling pleasantly as she followed. Do you know her? Su Zimo looked at Shi Jian and asked. Shi Jian looked up at her, and his expression seemed to stiffen slightly as he nodded. Is she one of our Vermilion Bird Island people? Su Zimo asked curiously. Shi Jian shook his head without saying a word. Are you planning not to say a single word? Su Zimo asked calmly. Junior brother Su, don't make things difficult for me, Shi Jian said with hesitation. Chapter 859, Land of Life and Death. Looks like you don't dare to say, Su Zimo said. He was somewhat curious about the identity of the white-dressed woman, but from the looks of it, she had quite a background. Even his senior brother didn't dare to answer him. Junior brother, I'm just a blacksmith. I don't know anything. Rock Solid quickly shook his head. Su Zimo didn't press further and walked straight toward his own cave dwelling. Because no one had been living in the cave on Vermilion Bird Island, it was rather simple. Inside there was only a stone bed, a stone stool and a stone table. A few clothes and some weapons hung on the walls. The weapons were all gifts from Rock Solid. When Su Zimo sat down on the stone bed, the white-dressed woman followed closely and sat on the stone stool beside him. What exactly do you want? Su Zimo asked, frowning. I want to get to know you, the white-dressed woman said. Now you know me. Can you stay a little farther away? Su Zimo said calmly. I want to make a deal with you, the white-dressed woman said. Not interested. Su Zimo waved his hand directly. You won't even hear what the deal is about? The woman said with a smile. Su Zimo frowned slightly, a little impatient. A blade intent condensed between his fingers and shot straight toward her. The blade intent tore through the silent air, carrying a chilling might. Seeing the blade intent coming, the white-dressed woman smiled slightly and flicked her finger, making it disappear without a trace. Are you always this unromantic to all girls? The white-dressed woman laughed lightly. I have no ill intentions. I'll give you 10 seconds to say what you have to say. Then get out, Suzimo said indifferently. I'm here on behalf of the Academy to talk to you, the white-dressed woman said seriously. If you need anything, you can tell the Academy. The Academy only hopes that in times of crisis, you'll lend a hand. I'm just one person with little power. What help could I give? Suzimo said. Your true martial sacred ground behind you, the white-dressed woman said. Before she could finish, Suzimo interrupted her directly. Stop right there. Suzimo waved his hand. If it's about the true martial sacred ground, go talk to them. I can't make the decisions. In any case, think about it carefully. I'll be back, the white-dressed woman said, then left. Suzimo frowned slightly. He had some idea of her purpose now. The Heavenly Tao Academy was facing trouble soon, and she knew he was a holy son of the true martial sacred ground. So they wanted to get the sect's help. But Suzimo couldn't be bothered. If the true martial sacred ground had ties with the Heavenly Tao Academy, helping wouldn't be a problem. But the key was that in the sect's history, none of its 4 grand emperors had ever come to train at the Heavenly Tao Academy. So he had no say in the matter. He sat cross-legged on the stone bed and began cultivating. Now his cultivation was all about building a solid foundation before breaking through. Morning light and dew, the first sun rising. Suzimo only awoke from cultivation then. When he stepped out of his cave dwelling, he found that Venerable Nu was actually waiting outside. Venerable Nu sat at the top of the valley, at that moment swallowing and exhaling the essence of sun and moon. The time when darkness and dawn intertwined was also when spirit force was the most concentrated. Seeing Suzimo come out, Venerable Nu stopped. Teacher, why are you here? Suzimo asked. No matter what, the other was his teacher in name. I came here specifically for you, Venerable Nu said with a smile. To take you somewhere. Where? Suzimo stepped forward and asked. You'll know when we get there, Venerable Nu said with a smile. Following behind Venerable Nu, the two rose into the air. They headed north from the Heavenly Tao Academy, traveling for about half an hour. Suzimo noticed that in the distance, the sky and earth seemed to change color. From the original blue, it turned into black and white. Like 2 black and white fish, it formed a yin-yang pattern reflected between heaven and earth. Their figures stopped in front of a great gate. The surface of the gate was also engraved with a yin-yang wheel, slowly rotating. Endless yin and yang energy poured out. What is this place? Suzimo asked in confusion, looking at Venerable Nu. The land of life and death, Venerable Nu said. Since the Academy made you my student, as your teacher I should at least take some responsibility. Seeing Suzimo's puzzled expression, Venerable Nu continued. I've observed you carefully. With your current strength, so-called divine medicines, martial arts, or secret techniques won't help you much anymore. After thinking it over, perhaps only this place can be of some help. So that in the battle for heaven's will, you can go one step further. The land of life and death, Suzimo murmured. He felt like he had seen this aura somewhere before, but he couldn't quite recall it. Our Heavenly Tao Academy was founded by the 10 sages. Built in the desolate era, you should know this, Venerable Nu said. Suzimo nodded slightly. In fact, of the 10 sages, he only knew the 1-4 sage and the Azure Tiger sage. One of the 10 sages, the Yin-Yang sage, once ascended to the outer heavens. What he cultivated was the Tao of life and death within the Yin-Yang Tao, Venerable Nu said. This Tao of life and death is extremely profound, and many people can't even enter its threshold in a lifetime. Back then, the Yin-Yang sage perfected the Tao of life and death, but unexpectedly was struck down and killed in the outer heavens. Countless years later, no one expected the Yin-Yang sage to actually revive within the Heavenly Tao Academy. Revived? Suzimo was a little surprised. Aside from himself, this was the first time he'd seen someone return from the dead. This is something many people already know, so it's not surprising, Venerable Nu said with a smile. After reviving, the Yin-Yang sage began cultivating again. In less than 100 years, he had already stepped into the immortal path. According to the sage, the reason he was struck down in the outer heavens back then was because he had obtained a treasure from the realm of life and death. And then, Su Zimo asked, the sage brought that treasure from the realm of life and death back here and cultivated in this place. In 100 years, not only did he himself step into the immortal path and return to the outer heavens, but even the place where he cultivated turned into the land of life and death, Venerable Nu said. I sensed the aura of the land of life and death on you, so I thought this place might be useful to you. In the entire primordial heartlands, in terms of life and death energy, our Heavenly Tao Academy's land of life and death ranks in the top 3. Life and death energy, what does that have to do with me?
Su Yimo Frauen.
If it was infernal energy, he could accept that it was related to him. But life and death energy was something he had never dealt with before. My cultivation method is special, with particularly sharp perception, Venerable Nu said. Besides infernal energy, there is a very pure life and death energy in you. There's no mistake. Su Zimo pondered for a long while before suddenly realizing. That's right, the Codex of Life and Death. Back when he was in the true martial sacred grounds abyss of life and death, with the help of the various ancestors, he had taken this Codex of Life and Death. Chapter 860 Brush of Life and Death. However, after the Codex of Life and Death entered his God world, it had been hiding all along. Su Zimo had once studied it specifically, but it was of no use. This Codex of Life and Death was just like a book. After opening it, all the pages were blank, and after getting no results from his research, Su Zimo had stopped paying attention to it. Now Venerable Nu's words made him recall it again. I think I know. He looked at Venerable Nu and said, I believe this place will be useful to you, Venerable Nu said with a smile. So I specifically applied to the academy for this. You can go in and have a look. Su Zimo nodded. He placed both hands on the great gate, and the yin-yang fish engraved on it began to rotate. With a rumbling sound, the heavy gate slowly opened. As the gate opened, Su Zimo looked up and saw that inside was shrouded in mist. It seemed like a completely new world. Dense life and death energy formed into black and white streams, floating abundantly in the air. Go in, Venerable Nu said. There's no time limit here, but I still hope you can come out before my formation is completed. Su Zimo nodded slightly. He knew that Venerable Nu was doing this largely because of his intention to save the vermilion bird. It was a kind of repayment. I'll stand guard outside for you, Venerable Nu said. Walking into the land of life and death. From the outside, it looked like a foggy black and white world. But upon entering, he found that visibility was actually very clear. The ground beneath his feet and the sky above his head were divided into black and white halves. As soon as he entered the land of life and death, Su Zimo discovered that the Codex of Life and Death inside his body had actually reacted. It was trembling slightly. Although the tremor was very faint, it could still be clearly felt. Su Zimo looked far into the distance. The space he was in was within a forest. In this forest, the vegetation was lush, and the towering trees rose straight up. Each tree trunk was over 10 meters thick. Su Zimo drew his blade and cut down a tree, but in the next moment, it regenerated before his eyes. This life force is almost comparable to the tree of life, Su Zimo sighed. The only drawback was that this life force only worked on the life forms here. Other creatures from outside could not benefit from it. The sound of swoosh, swoosh, swoosh suddenly came from all directions. Su Zimo looked up to see numerous branches, each over 10 meters thick, spreading toward him from the ground. There were about a dozen of them, all attacking him. He drew Shadow Tyrant and cut them down one by one. In the next moment, a roar came from the distance. The rumbling vibrations followed, and the ground began to shake. Su Zimo looked ahead and saw a towering giant tree slowly rising from the earth. The trees in this forest were already very tall, but this one stood even higher, like a crane among chickens. Its entire body was green, surrounded by countless branches, and on its trunk was a human face, a very old face. It was covered in wrinkles with white eyebrows and beard. You may not pass ahead, the giant tree said calmly. If you wish to cultivate, you may stop here. What if I must go through? Su Zimo asked. As soon as he spoke, countless branches came at him. These branches came endlessly, and even when cut, new ones would appear instantly. They were like tentacles. Su Zimo raised Shadow Tyrant, each slash filled with sharp blade intent. No matter how many tentacles there were, he cut them all down. Step by step, he approached the giant tree, his blade intent filling the entire sky. 19 forms of Dao-seeking. Samsara reversal. In the space before him, the dense life and death energy was separated. The rich life force transformed entirely into death energy. Especially along the blade's edge, the death-infused blade intent corroded the heavens. Slash, Su Zimo said softly. The rolling blade intent fell, and with a thunderous boom, the void in front of him shattered completely. With a scream from the giant tree, it was split in half. Su Zimo stepped forward, the dense death energy around him clashing against the life force, preventing the tree from reviving. The greatest strength of Samsara reversal was that it could invert yin and yang, and life and death were naturally part of yin and yang. Although the giant tree behind him was still struggling, Su Zimo's attention was not on it. It was on the high sky ahead. Floating there was a brush. The brush was 100 meters long, its body a mix of brown and black. The bristles at the tip were white, in sharp contrast to the black handle, and he did not know what they were made of. At this moment, the brush slowly moved through the air. The entire sky seemed to be splashed with ink, as it wrote the character Death across the heavens. When the character was complete, the brush vanished into the void, but the Death character remained in the sky. If the forest where the giant tree stood could be called the land of life, then ahead lay the land of death. Dense death energy spread through the forest, drifting into the distant trenches. The Death character above shone down, forming a 3-headed, 6-armed monster. That brush just now? Su Zimo frowned slightly. The brush of life and death? He didn't know why, but information about that brush suddenly appeared in his mind without warning. It was as if the codex of life and death he possessed and the brush of life and death were a set. Especially when the brush had just appeared, the codex of life and death in his true fate world had grown even more restless. Looks like I can only go in and take a look, Su Zimo murmured. Walking out of the lush forest, beyond was a death-filled trench. The contrast between the two places was stark despite their closeness. Ahead, the 3-headed, 6-armed monster roared at Su Zimo. Its 3 heads were nearly identical, its body huge, and each of its 6 arms bore a seal. At that moment, one of its arms dropped, and the seal in its hand transformed into a giant hammer. It swung the hammer fiercely toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo threw a punch, meeting the strike head-on. With a boom, a wave of force spread out. The monster's other arms moved wildly, the death seals in them constantly shifting. Some became swords, some became whips, others halberds, all striking at Su Zimo at once. The greatest threat was not the strength of these weapons, but the heavy death energy they carried. It sought to pour into Su Zimo's body and corrode him entirely. Seeing this, Su Zimo chuckled. 10 forms of demon. Second form, plague demon. For those plagued by karmic illness.